Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 127. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my little Christmas ball dangling there on my tree, Chris Raygun.
Is that
Chris,
a song?
how are you today?
Is that a song? It sounds. You said a dangling there on my tree, and it
Oh,
very...
I didn't mean to say it that way, but it's very folksy.
Yeah, it is very folksy.
Say it that way. Yeah, but it was not a song. It's just something I said and made up.
Oh, good.
On the spot there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, how are you? How's your life?
It's good. It's my birthday tomorrow, which is pretty.
That's right.
It's pretty disconcerting.
It is. You're what, 27 now?
Yeah, I'm about to be 27.
Yeah.
That's the year that all. That's the year that all the famous people die. The beloved famous people. So,
like Kurt Cobain, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Amy Winehouse and like a bunch of other. There's like a whole 27 club thing. Where it's like, oh,
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a little.
I just saw this Amy Winehouse thing pop up. I don't know what it was, but I remember thinking at the time, no offense to her, very talented, but I was like, this can't end well. I didn't think it was going to happen that quickly, that she OD'd or something, right? Like something happened like that, but wasn't it ironic because she also sang a song called Rehab or whatever that was really popular? And
it's pretty.
That's art, man.
It's pretty crazy, man. But no, it's like a lot of. I think it's like Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix. So it's a weird amount of people, actually.
Well, thankfully, you're not as famous as them.
Thank God. Jeez, otherwise it would have been a problem.
Did I ever tell you that? I think I probably must have told you at some point in our communiques with each other that when I was a kid, a Ouija board told me that I was going to die when I was 23. And so what the entire time I was 23, and I remember it, I believe it was the 2007, 2008 time period, like my original kind of editorship at IGN. And I remember every once in a while thinking like it could happen at any moment. Maybe I'm going to get hit by a car or bus. I was so disconcerted by that. But what I remember, and I never brought it up to my friend that I was with a few of my friends, but I remember one of them, it told him he was going to die when he's 56. And I just kind of keep that in the back of my mind in case he actually dies when he's 56.
You just
and then
on his 56th birthday, you'll just bring it up. It's like, hey, remember that thing that you totally forgot that you're probably going to be thinking about for the next 365 days now?
Yeah, that you never thought about ever again, but that stuck with me as like this really cursed thing that happened in my life. So, well, anyway, this is Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We do this podcast each and every week. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/colinslaststand. We really appreciate your support. We couldn't do it without you. You can get episodes of Sacred Symbols Plus as well by supporting us over there. That's only for patrons. It's basically a supplemental podcast we do each and every week. Last week's was a Miles Morales spoiler cast and review discussion. It was really fun. We went for almost 2 hours. We brought Dustin in for that one. And I think the consensus there, Chris, is that we all really liked it a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was it was one of those games that we all, I think, pretty unanimously enjoyed. And
we have Demon Souls coming up as the next spoiler cast, and that will be the next episode of Sacred Symbols Plus. Now, for that, because Chris and I don't have, well, especially me, I don't have the gumption, let's say, to play Demon Souls at this juncture. We're going to call in Mr. Matty Plays to do that along with Dustin, and we've already put out the plea for you to submit inquiries on Patreon. That's another perk you get over there on Patreon. We read all of your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, and then we try to select some for the show. Mark Elfering actually wrote into us this week, Chris, and he says, "Hey, CNC, I've been away from the cast for a while, but I pop in here and there with Knockback. I finally finished The Last of Us 2 and listened to the spoiler cast. I just want to commend you guys for how well thought out the discussion was, and that it still holds up 5 to 6 months later. Other casts, like Spider-Man, hold up as well. That was one we did back in 2018. But there's been a clear growth in the level of discussion between you two, and I thought that should be recognized. All the best. Keep doing what you're doing." Thank you, Mark. We've taken the feedback to heart. The spoiler casts are tough. I mean, we've said this in the past. I don't want to retread this ground, but I will anyway. They're hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just it's a weird, because you kind of, you want to make sure. I remember that was the big thing with the first one, where it was like we just straight up didn't spoil it. I think was something with was it Spider-Man that we just didn't.
It was really like Days Gone or it was probably Spider-Man. You're right, because that was one of the first ones we did. Yeah, it just wasn't very good. It wasn't as good as it would be now if we did.
Yeah,
I think maybe.
I think we have concrete proof of that, considering, I mean, we just did Spider-Man again, technically.
True, that's true. And I thought having a third opinion on there was really good as well, although we kind of all agreed with each other for the most part. I actually think that if I were to rank it, though, I probably liked it the most, I think, which maybe people would be surprised about. But with Demon's Souls, I haven't played it yet. Chris, have you played Demon's Souls?
Oh, yeah. I've played a little bit of it. I bet it's one of those games that I'm playing it and I'm like, you know what? I bet I could do really well if I really focused on this, but I'm also just not going to do that. It's very clear, like, oh, I could learn this, but like I don't have the patience or the time, quite honestly, to get good at that game. Like maybe later. I feel like after Cyberpunk and after the there's always kind of like a lull in January and February. I'm sure like some things are coming out, but like I think then maybe I'll sink my teeth into it. But I just know that with Cyberpunk around the corner, I'm like, I'm gonna get kind of competent at this, and then I'm just not gonna be able to finish it because I got to play this game.
I'm totally with you. It's exactly the way I feel about Bloodborne, because when Bloodborne came out in 2015, I played it a little bit and I was like, I don't know, it was kind of annoying, and I just moved on. And then in 2017 is when I actually sat down and really played Bloodborne, because I was in the mood for it, and I was just in that mode.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. I assume Demon's Souls will be there for me when I'm ready. And so I'll be ready maybe sometime in the next 3 to 5 years to never. We'll see what happens.
I gotta say, though, the big thing that's making me even want to come back to it at all is the fact that it's just really good looking. It's a really good looking game.
You're so good looking.
Every episode's got to have at least one.
Yeah, at least one reference to our favorite show. But I don't know, man. I'm excited about getting these spoiler casts out. We're going to culminate later in the year with the Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler cast as promised, and do a bunch of end of the year episodes of both Sacred Symbols and Sacred Symbols Plus. So just to remind everyone as we cruise into the new year, or into the holiday season and then New Year, we're not going to miss any episodes. So you'll get an episode every week of both shows, and we'll keep that going. Some of them will have been pre-recorded, obviously, and then that will culminate, I think in the first week of January, we'll actually do Game of the Year. If we're comfortable at that point. I want us to take as much time as we need to get it right for our respective lists, and we'll call in Dustin and maybe even have like Maddie on that one as well, and just try to get as many conversations going about these games as possible.
Yeah,
between awesome. The four of us, yeah, it would be cool, because between the four of us, we play much of what comes out, I would say. So
yeah,
it would be a nice, fair way to do it. But your feedback's always appreciated. Now, Chris, let's get into some of these corrections and notes and all these things. I want to start with a really important note, if I might. A little self-serving, but we've announced our new game over at Lilymo, the studio that I own a piece of and that I'm the creative director or whatever you want to call of. A little just 2-person studio, me and my friend Barry Johnson, and we have some freelance artists that we work with and some freelance audio guys and musicians. And so Habroxia 2 is our new game. It's a sequel to Habroxia, which is the original space shooter that Barry made by himself, or without me, I should say, back in 2019. It's a twin stick shooter, and it's non-linear, and it's got a story and upgrades and New Game Plus, and it's really awesome. We put out, I'm telling you, it's real. I really love this game, and I'm so excited for people to play it. It's a lot of fun. I love Twin Breaker as well, our first game that we did together, but this is a game for many more people, I think, than Twin Breaker, and I just love the leveling system, and I think people are really going to enjoy it. So it comes out February 3rd, 2021, and it's going to be on PS4, Vita, Switch, Xbox One, and PC, and it will work on your PS5 and your Xbox Series X or S. And right now, you can go to Play Asia. Our friends at Play Asia and East Asia Soft are doing physical copies of the game on PS4 and Vita. It is an open pre-order period. You have a few weeks from when we're recording this, so you can go get those pre-orders in if you want, because we learned our lesson, Chris, when we did Twin Breaker, and we tried to limit it.
Yeah.
the demand far outstripped supply. So it would be foolish for us to replicate that. And I didn't want to do that. So shout out to Barry for doing such a great job, and shout out to me for doing a little bit of work with this game as well.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. I appreciate it, and you're in the game as one of the lost astronauts.
Sick. I'm always a lost astronaut.
Yeah, exactly. The collectibles in the game are with these lost astronauts. People that played the original Habroxia will remember those. I was a lost astronaut in the first one, and so in the second one, there are 12 of you, I think, and so I just selected some names, including my 6 nieces and nephews. Each of them are one of the lost astronauts. One of the lost nieces and nephews. That's what I should have called them. All right, let's see here. What else? Oh, I want to talk to you about this one, Chris. Let's just get this out in the air here.
Yeah.
Ethan Bell wrote into us on Patreon. He says, "Dear Colin and Chris, I must follow up on last week's discussion about the innuendos in Ratchet and Clank titles. I believe you failed to notice the one for the upcoming latest installment. Swap the F sounds, the P sounds around in the name, and you have Ratchet and Clank ripped a fart. Does anyone else think this was intentional, or am I reaching too much here?" I think that he's right. I don't know why I didn't see that. Quite a few people wrote in about this, but I'm wondering, do you think that that's the intention?
I don't know. I don't think it's plausible, because that's kind of the naming schemes that these games use. But at the same time, like, rift apart is like a lot more of a stretch than like up your arsenal, you know, like, or what was the other one? What was the other obvious one? There
was a crack in time. Let me pull up the.
Is a quest for booty real?
Oh yeah, that's one. No, that's one.
Yeah,
that was the one of the down. That was the downloadable one, I think.
Yeah, so it's like when you compare it to those, like I could. This seems like a bit of a reach, but I don't know. This is kind of one of those things where it's like I feel like it's almost confirmation bias, no matter how you stretch it, because you're just kind of looking for something that could fit in, and you could probably just fit anything into this.
Yeah, it's Going Commando is the sequel, so that's obvious, and then Up Your Arsenal, and then Deadlocked was the that weird one that came out. There's one here, by the way, I didn't know, and I just clicked on it, that came to mobile phones called Going Mobile. I don't remember that at all. And then Size Matters.
Oh yeah, come on, like these are like I don't know.
Quest for Booty, A Crack in Time, I think is one, and then Full Frontal Assault.
Yeah, this one seems a lot more subdued.
Yeah, I just didn't see it. So I think you might be right, because when I read that, I was like, oh, you're right. If you do just transfix those two sounds, it is ripped a fart.
I don't know. Even ripped a fart seems kind of lame in comparison to.
Yeah, it's not really sexual, actually.
Yeah,
which
it's just
most of them are in some way, or at least perverted. I don't want to say sexual, perverted.
Yeah, this is
the same thing.
This is just kind of toilet humor, kind of, which is, I don't know. In my opinion, if it is supposed to be ripped a fart, it's a bit of a step down.
Yeah, and I also say that I was kind of hoping, maybe it's not in the spirit of the games, and I do love Ratchet and Clank, but I was kind of hoping that with this reiteration of Ratchet and Clank that began in 2016, that they were going to kind of get away from that. I never really understood why that was, because the games aren't really perverse, you know, or like they're not. I don't want to say they're like children's games, but they're not as childlike as I would say like Sly Cooper was, and I don't think they're as adult as some of these other mascots, but. I was always a little confused by that too. I was always like, why? I think it was just for marketing, and I think it worked.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. It was like the main reason that I paid any attention to those games, because I thought that the names were funny.
But anyone out there that hasn't played Ratchet and Clank, 2 good ways to do so. The first one is the Ratchet and Clank trilogy on PS3 that they re-released is awesome. It's a really great way to play the first 3 games, and obviously 2016's remake on PS4 is awesome. So check that out. But thank you, Ethan, for writing in.
If only you could play that game, that collection on PS4.
That would be nice.
That would be nice.
That'd be
or
nice.
PS5. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would be cool, but don't ask for too much.
Yeah.
Now, let's see here. What else? Oh, this is an interesting piece of news that has been making the rounds. PlayStation 3 got a new firmware update randomly. It's first one in years. It's 4.87, and I was reading about it. It's not mandatory, first of all, and it is basically just a way for people to play more modern Blu-rays. I guess they have to like re-up the licenses or something like that. And so the firmware update takes care of that so people can still use it. as like a Blu-ray player. So it's kind of a quality of life thing. And I guess they're seeing through their telemetry, as it were, that people are still using the PS3 to play Blu-rays. So they released that firmware update. So if you see that pop up, if you're still using your PS3, some of us do, then you'll know where that comes from, rather. And by the way, did you see this? This is making the rounds. Apparently, people have been selling access to their PlayStation Plus collection, like the collection of games that is available for PS5 owners or whatever. And so people are, I guess, selling access to their names and people are downloading the games, but then people are getting banned for doing this or whatever.
Right.
And so just something to keep an eye on, I guess, if you're one of those, you know, I don't know, what are you? What would you call a person that did something like that? A merchant of digital wares, I guess, illicit digital wares.
That's probably the best, the most ornate way to describe it.
Yeah, it's probably actually maybe the worst way to describe it is the way I just described it. But nonetheless, what do you think of this? People sell. Is the PlayStation Plus collection that good that you need to go buy access to it? I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a like, so I'm having a hard time even conceptualizing this. So they're selling like access to their PSN accounts, I guess. Right?
Yeah. So I'm going to pull up this story. Let's see here. Here it is. It's on Game Informer. So it says PS Plus is a membership service, blah, 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 blah. The PS Plus collection is only meant for PS5 players, but some PS4 players have been using PS5 accounts with this particular library, to download their free games onto their consoles. According to the Twitter user above, quote, most of the accounts will be unplayable for the next 2 months, including Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So basically, people are like sharing. So if they move on to a PS5, they can still have their PS4. So you know how you have your primary PS4 and your primary PS5?
Yeah.
It seems like what people are doing is like, you can still keep your PS4 as your primary PS4. You don't need it anymore. Those games are backwards compatible because they work on PS5, but you can actually just download them on PS4. And then they're sharing that, I guess, with other people that are then playing it on their names exclusively. And I guess those are that's causing some temporary bans and whatnot.
Right.
And this is apparently happening in East Asia primarily. But I thought it was just a weird happening that I wanted to share with the audience. A better thing that I wanted to share with you here, good news. Although that's good news too. I want people that are working the system to lose their rights as well. It's not right for the rest of us, but nonetheless, unanimously good news comes from Vice. Patrick Klepek over there wrote this piece called Internal Sony Doc Explains How Activities Became a Cornerstone for PS5. People should go read it. It's a pretty interesting article based on these documents from 2019 that he got access to through a developer. And it makes a bunch of arguments as to why these somewhat contentious cards that Chris and I have been talking about on the show on PS5, why they exist at all. But what they were saying, what apparently it says in this, Chris, in this Sony presentation is, quote unquote, single player is thriving. And so I thought people would be pleased to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
I mean, I think that's pretty clear, you know. Like the idea that single player is dying. Who said that? Was it EA or? Oh my God.
Yeah, I think it was EA because they were basically getting completely away from for a while from having any single player component in their games at all. Remember the original Battlefront, which came out just 5 years ago, didn't have a campaign, which seems completely insane.
Yeah,
today.
Titanfall 1 also didn't have one.
Right. Which is just unthinkable. I think kind of overcompensating in some way. Call of Duty, of course, a few years ago didn't have one as well, but that was not intentional.
Yeah.
They just didn't come together. And that's why there was a lot of movement on the dev side for that. So anyway, I thought I would just share that story with people in case they were curious about it.
Yeah.
Now, Chris, this one's for you. Gregory Hladishevsky. I don't know if I'm saying that right or not.
That was a pretty good attempt at that name, man.
Hladishevsky, maybe. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Says, good people, Chris's use of the term buttery smooth is appalling. It sends an involuntary shudder down my spine, and it is not a good shudder. The only butter Chris should use is a stick of butter for eating. According to the picture you posted of him on Patreon, he looks famished. Got a little personal there at the end.
A little bit. A little bit. I don't know. Is that like a contentious term? Is that like moist to some people?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he just doesn't like the way it sounds coming out of your lips.
I don't know. Buttery smooth is a pretty useful little phrase. I feel like people really understand what you mean when you say it.
Yeah, it's a nice superlative. I like it as well. Yeah, and I agree. Buttery. Yeah, you understand what that means. Smooth. Put them together. Buttery and smooth. Those are good words. So, Gregory, I think you're wrong.
Yeah.
But whether or not Chris looks famished, I don't think he looks famished. I think he looks very healthy. Chris has an amazing physique.
I have a very fast metabolism.
And a metabolism
It's very fortunate, but at the same time, it's enabled me to eat very poorly for a very long time. I have no discipline as far as like diet goes, like at all.
I don't either. That's why I just eat once a day as much as I possibly can. All right, let's see here. Jennifer Lubiano wrote into us and said, when you want cereal, do you pour the milk first or pour the cereal first, like a normal person? How do you eat your cereal?
I mean, I pour the cereal first.
Right, of course.
Obviously. Like, that's like, I know that this has been like a contentious like conversation for a long time. I've heard this scenario described multiple different ways in multiple different periods of my life, and very few times have I met anybody who poured the milk first and they stuck around the friend group. Like they never stayed. They never stayed around.
Yeah, it's bizarre because when you eat your bowl of cereal with milk and then you have some milk left over, but you want more cereal, so then you dump the cereal in the milk that's already been used and you kind of refresh it with some new milk. That's always less satisfying, and so that just tells you that it's the wrong way to do it. Period. It's just not the right way to do it, even on that first pour. So I don't know why who would do something like that?
I mean, I think of it just as like the premise of putting something together. You know what I mean? It's like if you're pouring the milk in first and then putting the cereal in, what you're doing is you're pouring a bowl of milk and then adding cereal. It's almost like you're seasoning your milk with cereal.
Right.
As opposed
almost to you're feeding a cat and then you took a left turn.
Yeah, it's just everything about it is wrong. You should never be pouring a bowl of milk unless it's for an animal.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Very well said. Thank you, Jennifer, for writing in.
Or you're cooking or something, you know. But
right, but a bowl of milk. I mean, what are you going to cook with? I don't know. You know what? I don't even want to presume. And don't write it. I don't want to know what you use.
Make pancakes like that. You have pour like a bowl of milk, and then you have the eggs, and then you get the mix a little bit, and the flour or whatever the fuck.
Really? Is that how you make pancakes? I don't even think I knew that.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've made them, but like I'm pretty sure I recall that.
You put milk in pancakes? Is that true?
Yeah. What do you? It's a cake.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess you would put. I guess I just picture it as like Bisquick, and you put water.
Oh yeah. Well, you can use water or milk. Is kind of
okay.
Thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it gives it different consistencies based on like what you put in it.
I see. Okay, because I put a little bit of milk, like a splash of milk and a splash of vanilla, of course, in my French toast mix.
Oh yeah,
the little French. You got to put a little bit of milk in that. Not too much.
Not too much.
All right. Finally, Luke Stanberry wrote in with a hypothetical. He says, "Hey boys, would you rather audibly fart every time you laugh or openly weep every time you fart? All the best." So Luke wants to know, would you rather audibly fart every time you laugh or openly weep every time you fart?
I think the first one.
Conundrum.
I think the first one. I don't want to be open. I don't want to be weeping, really. Like, weeping is not like a fun activity. You know?
Yeah,
gives anytime I've ever cried uncontrollably, I always get a headache. It's like a migraine level thing, and it's like, man, this is the worst thing. It's why I surgically removed my tear ducts to avoid that problem. But I think the first one's clearly the right answer. Like, I don't know if this is a matter of opinion.
You're right. No, I think, because you fart all the time. So you're going to be crying constantly. You could be crying dozens of times a day. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And second, Luke. And plus, farting's fun. And it feels good. Yeah. Right? I love farting. I think farting's great. Who doesn't love to rip a Mondo fart?
A Mondo. That's a good callback.
All right, let's see here. Let's get into what we're playing. Chris, it says you're playing Control. A little throwback.
Yeah. I'm going back to it only because we have hardware that at least is capable of running it a little bit better. So I'm trying to get through that, especially because there's DLC that I just kind of want to get to. So I'm doing that. Not much to say about it. My opinion is still the same. It's a really good game. I really like it, and I think it's worth your time if you're looking for some weird, like a very weird, very very weird third person kind of action kind of dungeon crawler kind of is what it is a little bit. It's not procedurally generated or anything, but it's pretty damn good.
It's a great game. I platinumed it when it was on, or when it came to PS4, and we did our spoiler cast for it, and it's very confusing, like you said, but I find it quite charming.
Yeah.
As well. Just it's different. I know it's Remedy's thing to use live action stuff, and I love that kind of thing, especially because I'm so kind of new to their games compared to people that play an Xbox.
Yeah, given given like the art style and like the way that game looks, it looks like a standard kind of AAA game, with like, oh, here's like a really really good graphics and like, it's like standard lighting. It's like everything looks like very industrial, and it's like, oh, this is just a modern video game, but like even despite it looking like that, it's like one of the most unique things that I've played probably the entire PS4 generation. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. It's still good.
Great. Yeah, Remedy is kind of expanding. I think they have a few projects now in the works, and we'll see how Control continues. For me, I've been playing a few games, so I finally beat Miles Morales and platinumed it, and we did the aforementioned spoiler cast and review discussion, so go listen to that. I talk about the game quite a bit there, but short story is I love it. I think you can argue it's the best PlayStation exclusive launch game ever for a PlayStation console, and maybe the best launch game, period, for a console, PlayStation console. I would not include old Nintendo games. I mean, Super Mario World, and especially, and of course, Super Mario Brothers would be both better, but I think it's really an impressive game, and people should go check it out. And then I also played, for the first time, really all the way through and beat Shadow of the Colossus on PS4. I played it on my PS5, and it's a really good game, although we did a knockback episode about it, so you guys can go listen to that. It's like two hours and change. But my brief thoughts on that, the game is just that it's so inspiring and interesting and beautiful and haunting and melancholic and all of that, and I just wish it didn't feel the way it felt to play. I can't get over that hump. I beat the whole game. I really enjoyed a lot of my time with it. Yeah. But I just can't get over the control scheme, and I find that quite confusing how people forgive it, So I know that's one of your favorite games, so how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, I think controls have a different impact on different people depending on like how adverse you are to it at the start. I think controls never really bothered me that much. I think I always kind of go with the default controls of everything, because I always figure like, okay, so this is the way that the developer figured that this would be the best way to organize these buttons, and the best way to organize these actions, and the best way to place these inputs. So I just sort of force myself to learn them even when I have a hard time. Like I think Death Stranding gave me like a really hard time in the beginning, because it was just a lot of Death Stranding is like a really cumbersome game to play technically. Like if you're looking just at like the way that it controls and like what you're supposed to do, it's very weird and very kind of unorthodox in a lot of ways. But I think that game is so long that you spend so much time with it that you just sort of get into a groove, even if it is kind of weird. And I think about like, the earlier Resident Evil games where it's kind of intentionally stilted and kind of awkward to play. And I managed to get over that. So I feel like Shadow of the Colossus never bothered me. I actually thought like of the games with like weirder control schemes, I thought it was one of the more fluid games that I've ever played. But I mean, to each his own as far as controls go.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's totally this game that we kind of, and I talked about this on the knockback episode, but it's kind of graded on a curve because it's just so well regarded that you nitpick it a little bit, and I totally admit to doing that as well. But I can't help that people it's the same thing I said about Persona 4 when I finally played it, and I'm like, well, you guys for many years told me that this game was going to like blow me away, and I don't know that it did for me.
Yeah, no,
it's kind of a similar situation.
It's impossible. It's impossible at that point. When you've heard, I feel that way. I felt that way about The Witcher. The Witcher 3. When I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty great, but like also like Geralt is wearing Heelys. It feels like and the ground has. I was playing it actually like last night, and I was enjoying my time with it, but like there were points where I was like trying to walk around, and I was like, man, the ground is just coated in wax sometimes in The Witcher 3, and it's kind of wild that that's such a common occurrence in this game that everybody just sort of regards really highly, and I regard it very highly too. But it's just interesting to see like how many faults a game can have that will still ultimately not really matter to public opinion because the rest of it is so enthralling. And I think the biggest thing about Shadow of the Colossus, aside from just like the amazing soundtrack and like I think the really, really beautiful art of it, is just the way they handle level design and boss encounters and the way that they're kind of synonymous, because like every boss is its own level within a level kind of, and you have to like figure out how to like maneuver up this thing, but it's also the thing you're fighting, and it's like, oh, this is so cool. It's just a cool approach to game design in general that I wish more people copied, honestly, like straight up.
My brother said, and we've discussed in the past, it's just boss rush, and it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, and it's so fucking lonely.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I really love that. And so pretty much everything about the game I think is great, but even the remake, and we did play the remake, so the Blue Point remake from 2018, because I wasn't about to go back again to the PS2 one, although that's totally fine if you guys want to, but yeah, it was good. So anyway, people can go listen to that if they want, but I guess that does bring up this question we have from the late Nate, who wrote into us on Patreon and says, "What's up, Five Guys Colin and New York Bodega Chris?" Why is Chris New York Bodega? Seems a little racist, if I'm being honest.
I accept it. I like it.
Oh, okay. My question is pretty simple. Have you guys played any PS4 games on your PS5? And if so, were they enhanced for PS5, and how did you like the enhancements? I bought the PS5, but that was my entire video game budget for the next 2 months, so I'm stuck with my PS4 backlog. Luckily, I've finally gotten around to playing Ghost of Tsushima, and let me say I'm glad I waited. As you probably know, Ghost plays at 60 frames on PS5 in resolution mode, and it is fantastically smooth and gorgeous to the point where I feel like I would have gotten a noticeably worse experience had I just played it on my OG PS4 that was 30 frames with drops and fewer particle effects. Really glad I waited. So the funny thing is, and I kind of had just come to realize this somewhat recently, I guess, is most of my game time has been with PS4 games, because I played Astrobot, and then I played a little bit of Miles Morales, but then I played a bunch of Final Fantasy VII Remake, like 14 chapters of it. And then I played a little bit more Miles, and then I played Shadow of the Colossus all the way through, which is a PS4 game. And then I went back to Miles and platinumed it. And now I'm on to Bug Snacks, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I've been playing it with a lot. And in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I don't know that I really noticed any enhancements at all. It felt just as the load times felt as long to me, but I don't know, maybe that's neither here nor there. But then when I was playing Shadow of the Colossus, it did read Shadow of the Colossus as playing on PS4 Pro. And then so that I put it in, 60 frames, and it was very nice. So I enjoyed it. How's your experience been with PS4 games?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we talked a little bit about my first experience with Spider-Man and the awkward kind of like having both versions of the game installed at once and not being able to tell the difference. That was a little jarring. That was like my first experience with PS4 games on PS5, and it was not positive. But I mean, everything that I've played so far, like I have played Ghost of Tsushima, and I love the fact that it runs at 60 frames. It looks fucking gorgeous. It looks perfect. Although I gotta say, I don't know if you would have had like a worse experience if you played it in 30 frames first, because 30 frames, like if it's a consistent 30 frames and it doesn't drop, 30 frames is pretty fine. And in my experience with Ghost of Tsushima, I don't recall any frame drops that I perceived to be noticeable at all. I think it was pretty flawless, and even on PS4 it loaded absurdly quickly. So I don't even know if I noticed that much of an improvement there, but I think Ghost is probably the only thing that I've played on PS5 that's a PS4 native title. I think I'm just too. I'm excited to get into Destiny once that patch comes out, but I can't play. I can't play Destiny at 30 on a console right now because I know how it feels to play it at 60 on PC. So I'm just waiting for that. But the experience for PS4 stuff has been fine. I do wish it enhanced more titles. I feel like Final Fantasy VII Remake should be enhanced because I'm pretty sure that has a performance and resolution mode, from what I recall. So the fact that it's not really all that changed is a little weird, but You know, I don't know. It's a PS5. You know, you should be playing PS5 games on it. Ultimately, that's what it's for.
Right. That's what. Yeah, exactly. That's what it's for. In the meantime, the PS4 games will keep us company.
But we got to have those games because, you know, there's not a lot of PS5 games out right now.
Right. I actually saw Polygon posted like the top 10 PS5 games, and I'm like, how many fucking PS5 games are there? What are like 18 or something? It's not like that there are that many games. So yeah, it's good to have. I'm really enjoying it. I don't think people that don't have one are missing out on very much right now. It's really cool and fun to have. It's easy for me to say. I have 2 in my house. It's not like I'm one of the many people that really want one, so I understand that frustration. But you can take it from me, guys. Like I feel like Miles Morales is on PS4. You can play it there, and these things will free themselves up, and you're not really missing an incredible amount, unless for some reason. And there are many of you that you're like a From Software super fan or something that I'm sure you're incredibly frustrated with not being able to play Demon's Souls. But yeah, so otherwise here, Chris, I've been playing Bug Snacks, and I started it last night. And it's funny because Eddie Almager wrote into us on Patreon, and he says, question for Chris. In the first post-PS5 era episode of Sacred Symbols, he mentioned he was playing Bug Snacks, but the following week he didn't bring it up. Chris, did you beat it? Thoughts? It was a pretty poor game in my opinion, but I want to know what you think. So before I even get into my thoughts on this game, which I'm surprised by for better or for worse, and I'm eager to talk about that, what did you think of, have you played Bug Snacks since? And kind of let's revisit your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, so like I was kind of amused by it when I first touched it because it was like it had a tone that I wasn't expecting. It's a very bizarre kind of tone because it feels like a kid's game, but at the same time it feels like there's like this weird air of there's this weird sinister air about it that I couldn't really put my finger on, and I don't even know if it was necessarily intentional or whether or not I was like reading into it, but I felt like it was there, and I played a little bit of it, and I put it down to play like Miles and do a bunch of other stuff, and you know I never got around to getting back to it. I was meaning to though, but it just wasn't called. I honestly, I'm not even joking. I think it just got bumped off of the off of my games tab into my library because I downloaded so much. So like I just kind of forgot that it was on my system, so I haven't gotten back to it, but I've been interested to go back. It's just there's so much to play right now, both PS4 and I'm trying to go through Black Ops right now also. So, yeah,
and you play a lot more on other consoles as well. So
yeah, that's true. I've been fucking around with other systems and PC stuff too. But
Bug Snacks is interesting because I remember when it was announced, and I haven't really paid very much attention to it apart from I think what we saw on the PlayStation. What is that thing they do? I can't remember what it's called. State of Play, yeah. And I was going to call it PlayStation Access, but I think that's something else. But yeah, the State of Play, and I think they showed it there, and I was like, okay. And I'm not, Young Horses made the game, and I'm not really crazy about them, to be honest. No offense to them. But obviously, they're great at what they do. They made Octodad, which a lot of people do love. I'm not into that game. So I didn't really know what to expect here, but it was free on PlayStation Plus. I would have actually bought it. So that was nice that it was free. I appreciate it, but I would have bought it. And it's surprising, actually. I didn't realize that there's something serious about this game. A couple people have said this to me in passing, that there's like a serious underbelly to this game in some way. I don't know if that's true or not, but like, it's just, I didn't know you played as like a journalist or something and you're looking for like another lost journalist or
yeah
it's like weird. Like I was like, okay, I had no idea what and the people here eat these creatures that turn their bodies into I don't know if is it like trying to tell me something? I don't know.
It feels almost like allegorical, and I feel dumb for not getting it. You know, like I feel like this has gotta mean something because like it's just so specific in its setup. Like the fact that it starts off and like you're just like in the dark rummaging, and this freaking pizza thing like flies over you and crashes like a tree on you, and then you're like lost in the woods, and then you find these people, and this dude's like, I remember one of the first characters that you met was like, I'm starving, I'm gonna die soon, I'm gonna be dead, I'm gonna die, and I'm like, yo, what is this game? I don't understand. And then you're like being harassed by your boss in like this dimly lit kind of like film noir office. It's so weird.
It is. It's weird, and I'm intrigued by it, and I really love the cute little voices. in the game. Love it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the voice acting and the names are great too, but just the like, bug snacks thing that like comes out of your controller when you catch one of them. It's fucking awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm really liking the sound coming out of this controller for some reason. I hated it on PS4.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the sound coming out of the controller still, but it's definitely less egregious than it was on PS4 for whatever reason. Maybe they're just being a little bit more subtle with it. Because I remember on PS4 it was just like straight up audio logs would come through, and it's like, oh my god, it's like my hands are talking to me.
Yeah, Killzone Shadowfall did that.
Yeah,
famously,
but
which is not a bad idea actually, because it was basically like you can keep playing while you're listening, which is kind of nice. But you could just do that over the TV speakers too.
Yeah, but Bug Snacks is one of those weird. I've been meaning to get back to it because I do kind of. I don't know if it's like fun in like a really like in like a Titanfall 2 kind of way, but it is like there is like a weird sense of satisfaction in like catching these things, even if it's not that hard. That kind of just makes me want to go back and jump into it. I still don't know whether it's a good game or not. It's really really confusing, but it's intriguing, and I think it's probably worth your time just because, if nothing aside from the fact that it's free.
Yeah, exactly. I hope it's not free anymore. So I hope that people did what I told them to do. And
wait, I thought it was going to be free till January.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, cool.
I might be wrong. Hold on, let me look this up.
No, you might be right. I was thinking that Destruction All-Stars was the one that was free for a long time, but that hadn't happened yet. But you might be right. If so, you guys should definitely go check it out still. That would be great. Oh, you know what? I guess that would be true too, because PS5 didn't come out until the middle of the month. So it wouldn't really be fair.
January 4th, 2021.
Perfect.
Is when,
good information. Thank you, Chris.
Is when it ends.
So, hey, guys, out there, if you don't have a PS5 yet, I know many of you don't, you should be able to still use the app to go in and secure add it to your download list. Do that for the PS5 games, and there's a new PS5 game. I think Worms is just added. So make sure you guys are doing that, or I'll beat you to death. And then let's see, what else here? Oh, one more question, I guess comment really, before we move on. Mason Sewell wrote into us and said, what's poppin' CNC cream machine? I don't like that. Said, I'm a longtime listener writing in for the first time, and I want to use this opportunity to tell you and my fellow listeners to stop sleeping on Sackboy: A Big Adventure. I figured it would get lost in the conversation amongst the likes of Miles Morales and Demon Souls, but Sackboy is seriously great, and I see almost no one talking about it. It's a very capable platformer stuffed with personality and charm. The level design is incredibly imaginative, and the music is top-notch, both the original score and the licensed music. Seriously, who would have guessed that a Sackboy platformer would have stages featuring music from David Bowie, Britney Spears, and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard? I don't know who that is.
That is the only one that I... no, it's not the only one I know. Obviously, I know David Bowie and Britney Spears. But King Gizzard is a phenomenal band. I'm actually really... it's really jarring to see that they're in this game in any capacity.
Yeah, I have no idea. I can't say I know what that is. I'm maybe too... I'm out of it, obviously. But he says... You guys better give it a shot or I will beat your asses without the B. Wow, so he's going to eat our asses. That's fucked up.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Stay safe and happy holidays from cold and wet Seattle. Yeah, it's fine. If you're into that, getting it or giving it, to each his own. Do what you want.
I mean, he did threaten us with this, though, so, the implications are pretty dire.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be the good kind of eating of the ass, but let's see here. Sackboy. So it's funny because I just tweeted about this game a day or two ago because someone had suggested it, and I had said that when Micah's coming to visit again for a few weeks and she's staying here over the holidays, and I was like, I want to play this with her because it's supposed to be really fun in co-op, and we actually had a good time playing whatever it was, Streets of Rage 4, so I was hoping that we would play that together. And then I wondered aloud, I was like, I gotta get another controller. And then I realized that I own another PS5, so I have another controller, but I didn't say anything, and then someone actually called me out on that, so I had to admit that I'm a fucking idiot. Because there was a while where I was like, I got to get another controller. I don't have another controller, but
It's so funny that you got a PS5 with like nothing. Is that the controller with the app?
Yeah, I'm struggling over.
But honestly, the DualShocks are not hard to find anyway. Like I know that I know that PS5s are obviously in super short supply and they're really hard to get your hands on, especially with all the scalpers and the bots buying up everything. But I was tripping over DualSenses. Because I went to Best Buy because I needed a new Ethernet cable because the one that I was using was quite old and frayed, and I was tripping over these things. Like there's it felt like there were hundreds upon hundreds of DualSenses at the Best Buy that I went to.
It's good news because I think that scalpers were scooping those up too for a while. So hopefully they got screwed out of some money or time by doing that if they did. I think those docks are pretty popular. The docks are like the camera this time. Remember the PS4 camera was like impossible to find.
Yeah.
And this time around, I think it's that controller dock everyone's kind of chasing after. So
I'm a dedicated near daily user of CBD, so I'm always eager to tell folks about its many advantages. CBD stands for cannabidiol, which is an extract from the marijuana plant. But unlike its cousin THC, the admittedly wonderful stuff that gets us stoned, CBD is totally different. See, it can help you with anxiety, sleeplessness, and even bodily pain, and it does so safely, legally, and effectively, all without getting you high. An awesome way to take CBD is with Feel's Premium CBD Tincture, an easy-to-take remedy that can help put your mind at ease, find some sleep, or escape persistent aches in your joints and elsewhere. Using Feel's is simple. You just take a few drops, place them under your tongue, and in as little as a few minutes, you'll start feeling more relaxed, less stressed, and living just a little bit easier. And there really are no deleterious side effects. You won't get high, nor will you be groggy or hungover the next morning. Quite the opposite, in fact. I typically use Feels when I'm ready for bed, and if anything, it helps me capture some sleep I'd probably otherwise be missing, allowing me to best take on my day. If you want to try Feels for yourself, become a member at feels.com/symbols. That's feals.com/SYMBOLS. Becoming a member is a great way to get Feels CBD delivered to you on a regular basis, so you always have what you need. And heading to feels.com/symbols can net you 50% off your first order with free shipping. So give Feels CBD a try, my friends. You'll be glad you did. Again, for 50% off your first order with free shipping, become a member at feels.com/symbols.
all right, so Chris, this news happened while we were recording. We're stapling this to the front of the show or towards the front of the show. It seems here that both Mark Darrah and Casey Hudson, longtime big shots at BioWare, have left the company. And we have a letter. So we have, and I'm sorry that I'm somewhat unprepared. I'm totally unprepared for this.
Yeah, this is breaking as far as we're recording this.
So Laura Meal, who's the chief studios officer at EA, wrote a blog post, and here's what she wrote. I'm reading this at the same time that you guys are hearing it. She says, "We strive for all of our studios to be places where talented creative people come to do career-defining work. A dimension of this ambition is that sometimes those people want to try different things. Casey Hudson, GM of BioWare, and Mark Darrah, executive producer of Dragon Age, are two of those people, and they have decided to move on from BioWare. I want to personally thank Casey and Mark for everything they have done for the BioWare community, in particular for our players. They will always be an essential part of the studio's history, and we appreciate their many contributions." She then links to posts that both Casey and Mark read, which I'll look at in a minute. She says, "When I think about BioWare's future and the next generation of talent in place, I cannot be more confident or optimistic. As we look to the studio's future and the projects currently under development, the next generation of BioWare talent is leading the studio forward and working on some incredible games that I know you will be excited to experience in the coming years. Samantha Ryan, who came to Electronic Arts after leading Warner Brothers games, is one of the strongest leaders in the industry. She will continue to oversee the studio. I'm also excited to announce that Christian Daly, who joined BioWare from Blizzard, will be leading our Dragon Age project currently in development. Christian is a fantastic creative leader, and I look forward to you all getting to know him, blah, 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 blah." So then Casey Hudson wrote a letter. It's pretty lengthy. It's the second time he's left BioWare, so I don't think it has that much of an impact, frankly, as much as it did the first time. And then Mark Darrah wrote his posts as well, just to catch everyone up on who these guys are in case they don't know. Casey Hudson has been with BioWare since the very beginning, basically, and was the project director of Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, and he also worked in a production role on Knights of the Old Republic, and he was basically the face of the studio. And then Mark Darrah is a longtime programmer and then producer. He was a programmer on some old BioWare games like Jade Empire and the Baldur's Gate games, Neverwinter Nights, and then rose up to the executive producer rank with the Dragon Age series, which he has led that entire time. And so we have to take more time to kind of digest this, but I at least wanted to get your take, Chris, on this sudden news.
I mean, that's pretty huge. That's amusingly enough, that's what is this, the fourth story today that we've covered about somebody, like people leaving a studio after like 20 years.
Yeah.
Like how long is, I know Casey Hudson's been there for a long ass time, like 2001, I think, or like 2000.
Yeah. So yeah, he was there in the beginning, because he worked on MDK2,
Yeah.
which I think was his first game. So I don't think he was like a founder of BioWare, because they were founded in the mid-90s, but MDK2 was like his first game. So he's been there for at least 20 years. And then, like I said, for both of them, with Mark as well, Mark Darrah, he's been there for about 20 years as well. But you have to remember that Casey Hudson left BioWare.
Yeah.
And went to Microsoft. He left BioWare in 2014, went to Microsoft, and then left Microsoft in 2017 and went back to BioWare. So now he's leaving BioWare again.
Yeah, I do remember, because I remember hearing, like, when I saw this, it was like Casey Hudson leaves BioWare. I was like, wait. Because I remember, I thought I heard that before, and I guess I did. Should trust my intuition more often. But no, it's just interesting. I think the only thing, I mean, this is obviously super fresh, so I don't know what to really think about it, but I do think it's just fascinating that there's just this trend of like nearly 20-year veterans just sort of booking it from all these studios.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if these two will find their way together or not. They've worked apart and together, so we'll see. Also, Casey was much more associated with Mass Effect and Mark much more associated with Dragon Age, so what's surprising about them leaving is that it's kind of like the center of gravity for both of those franchises leaving at the same time. So there is a lot to consider here. I feel like there's got to be a reason why this is happening. This could very well be because the games aren't going well. And I don't know if they're going to say, they clearly don't say that here, but them leaving at the same time is conspicuous to say the very least. I need to digest it a lot more. But BioWare in the Casey Hudson era, the second one, has not been very good at all. And so, he came back, they released Andromeda, then they released Anthem. I mean, Dragon Age has been in development forever. There's really not much to show. Yeah. And so they might have removed them. And I think that that's entirely possible, but I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah, we're speculating, obviously, because this is still pretty fresh and we don't know what the hell's going on. But that is a big deal for BioWare, the fact that that's to lose a key component of both of your key franchises, because as of right now, BioWare is pretty heavily leaning on Dragon Age and whatever future Mass Effect will potentially exist to carry them out of the wake of Anthem. And to lose these people right now is that's I don't want to say that's like doom and gloomy, but like that's not ideal to say the least.
No, definitely not. So we wish everyone involved the very best, and we'll have maybe more to say about it next week, but we wanted to make sure to include that happened at the very tail end of our recording session. So, all right, back to the show. All right, Chris, let's get into the news, if we might.
Yeah, let's do it.
This first piece of news is long, but bear with me, it's important, and maybe it tells us something, maybe it doesn't. I'll leave that up to you, and we'll discuss it. So let's get into it. Number one. A few Sony-owned studios have lost some major talent, though it doesn't appear that these departures are related, nor does it necessarily suggest any issues at their respective teams. For starters, Bend Studio, which is often called Sony Bend, lost both one of its co-founders and its lead designer. John Garvin, who was with when going all the way back to the original Siphon Filter, they were known as Eidetic at the time, left the team, and strangely, according to a Twitter post, he left last year and just never said anything about it. Garvin was a major creative force at Bend. He wrote every Siphon Filter game as well as Resistance Retribution, Uncharted Golden Abyss, and Days Gone. He acted as creative director on the latter Siphon Filter games and then rose to director for Uncharted Golden Abyss and Days Gone. His leaving seems amicable, but it's unclear why it was kept quiet. Garvin spoke about his exit the same day that Jeff Ross announced he'd also be leaving Bend, effective immediately. Ross was game director of Days Gone and was a key designer for most of the Siphon Filter games, as well as Resistance Retribution and Uncharted Golden Abyss. Garvin says he's taking time to pursue personal projects where Ross ends up remains to be seen. But it doesn't end there. Website Gamatsu reports that Keiichiro, I always struggle with that one, Toyama, a key member of the Sony-owned Japan studio, has also left Sony, creating his own outfit instead, a team called Bokeh Game Studio. Toyama is the creator of the popular Japanese Sony IPs Siren and Gravity Days, known in the West as Gravity Rush. He directed both Gravity Days games as well as the original Siren, and actually hails from late 90s era Konami, where he worked on the original Silent Hill. Making matters worse for Japan Studio is that Toyama took some personnel with him, including Kazunobu Sato, a designer who worked on games like Puppeteer, which I love, and The Last Guardian, which he produced, and his longtime collaborator Junya Okura, who was the lead designer for the Siren and Gravity Rush franchises. Gamatsu notes that in an interview with Japanese gaming magazine Famitsu, Toyama has interest in working on Siren and or Gravity Rush in a second-party capacity in the future if Sony is interested, though they are already working on their own independent game. And the potential bleeding doesn't stop there. It appears that the mysterious team working out of San Diego, apparently on an Uncharted game, has already lost some talent, according to website Push Square. Quentin Cobb, who worked as a designer on The Last of Us and Uncharted 4 before going to the mysterious San Diego team, has since left. And John Bautista, another designer, has also left, though what he said when he left was perhaps strangest. In a series of tweets, and these tweets are weeks apart, announcing his exit, he said in part, quote, "It was a crazy ride and an amazing company, but things just didn't work out this time. That being said, I'm proud of what we were able to achieve given the craziness we went through, ellipsis. Just to clarify, I made the decision to move on due to my own personal circumstances. As far as I know, the studio is still there and the project is still ongoing." End quote. Anu Sakani wrote into us and said, "Hello there, Colin and Chris. Today on Twitter, John Garvin announced that he left Bend's studio over a year ago, and Jeff Ross announced this would be his last week at Sony Bend. Just wanted your guys' insights on what could be going on over there. Did they feel they had peaked at Bend, and was it time to move on to greener pastures? Or is the studio as a whole in potential trouble after Days Gone? Also, Keiichiro Toyama announced that he had left SIE Japan to form a new studio with a couple of former SIE producers, Kazunobu Sato and Junya Akura. With this happening so close to the departures from Bend, is something concerning going on within SIE as a whole. Keep up the great work, guys." All right, I know that was a lot.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get it all out there. So we can take these are basically three things.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's start with the Bend news. What do you make of John Garvin? So I know John Garvin. I like John Garvin a lot. I had the opportunity to pick his brain extensively when I wrote the history of Sony Bend at IGN, and he's an interesting guy. He wasn't one of the founders of Eidetic, which was the original form of Bend, but he was one of the guys, like the co-founders of the Bend brand, basically, beginning with Siphon Filter, and he is the creative force behind everything they do as far as the story is concerned. He made Siphon Filter. That's his thing. And he also is one of the few writers to have written like something as big as Siphon Filter and also written an Uncharted game and a Resistance game and then wrote Days Gone. I feel like his loss is huge, and it's amazing how that was kept secret. I never heard that, which is amazing because I talked to a lot of people in the industry. It was a surprise to a lot of people. And then Jeff Ross surprised me too, because he seemed to be pretty happy working at Bend and is one of the massive design forces behind what I think makes that game run and makes that game work. And he told me something interesting on Twitter, actually, when I tweeted at him, because I was surprised to see that he was leaving. And so I said to him, happy for your move, but well, obviously you'll be missed at Bend. Hope you get to leave more than a few touches in Days Gone 2. And he said to me, "It was time, Colin. I think the design team knows what makes Days Gone tick. It's all good." So seems like it seems like an acknowledgement that we're going to get the sequel, which is not a huge surprise.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this? Garvin and Ross, pretty much they're big guys. They're directors leaving.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty big. This seems to be happening a lot. I think this happened, something similar happened at Rockstar, like not too long ago, where like a lot of their creative forces kind of like went for the hills. It's very weird. I do think though that this could potentially be just an example of a studio having been around for a long time and people just being like, man, geez, I've been doing this a long time, you know? Like, I think especially just with the last year and how insane shit's been. Although I guess this with Garvin leaving specifically, that was a while ago. But I don't know. Like, what do you think the main draw of Days Gone is, though? Like, do you think it was the story, or do you think it was the Horde stuff?
Yeah, it was the Horde stuff. It definitely wasn't. The story wasn't anything special. Like, remember when we did the spoiler cast? I did say, like, wouldn't it have been cooler if they did X, Y, and Z and all of that, like on the like to have like this mountain and the bikes make noise for a reason, and they're
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe there was maybe this was reasonably thought out in some way, and maybe it's like, hey, you know what, the story we can handle. Hey, we know how the game runs now. We know the tech that we need to use, and maybe they just felt like they had to do something else or just leave. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. It's so weird. It's very strange that they kept it on the wraps for so long, but at the same time, like, I don't know if it's necessarily the best press to like put out that news immediately. you don't want the director of your just put out game to just have left, you know?
Yeah, and that's true, and presumably also he was paid out pretty substantially, I imagine, and might have had to remain quiet as well. So the other side of that is that it could have been up to him to say whatever he wanted, and he just didn't say anything. So I don't know. The Ben stuff may be coincidental because I feel like Days Gone actually kind of gave them a reprieve. I think Days Gone was a huge success for them. I think that if it went south with Days Gone, they wouldn't have made it as a team because it took them so long to put that game out. So I don't know. That's one part of the equation. The second part of the equation, I think, is maybe the most interesting one, Chris, which is Keiichiro Toyama leaving Japan Studio. He's been there for 20 something years. And like I said, was basically the creative force and the writer behind Siren and Gravity Rush. And what's interesting, as I said, is that he's taking some of his designers with him. So, and basically already admitting that he's totally willing to work for Sony in a second party capacity. So this isn't something that's that unusual that happens out of Japan Studio. Team Eco, remember, was internal, and then they basically left and made Gen Design and then just finished The Last Guardian as a second party or in a second party relationship. So a similar thing could be happening here. But what's surprising is that Gravity Rush 2 came out so long ago now. It's been more than 2 years, I think. So they were doing something there that we're never going to maybe see.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But what do you make of them leaving Japan Studio and starting to do their own thing?
I think if they left, it must mean that it seems like there's no animosity between them and Sony. But at the same time, I think there's probably something there in the sense that they were probably working on something that either they weren't happy with or Sony wasn't happy with, and they were like, "Hey, I just gotta go." Because if they're still willing to work on franchises that they've already worked on, and they're still willing to work with the people that they left, it's clearly not a hostile, breakup, to say the least. I think it's more likely that they were probably just working on something that they didn't care about.
Maybe, but I will say that to the Gen Design thing, there was clearly animosity between everyone involved, and they still went and finished the game anyway. So,
yeah,
Ueda, I think it's pretty clear that in some way Ueda and Kaido, the director and producer of The Last Guardian, were fired. I mean, that was long my theory, but they came back. Or Kaido didn't. I think Kaido moved on, but Ueda obviously came back with Gen Design and finished the game. So yeah, it doesn't seem. I don't know if it's because we're so detached from the Japanese game scene that we don't have.
It's all speculative anyway.
Right?
Like what we're doing, but it's really hard to dissect this, especially just because it's so far from the stuff that it's so far from American game development in every way.
I will say this though, Chris, I'm just looking. Gravity Rush 2, it's actually worse than I thought though from a way. Gravity Rush 2 came out in January of 2017, so it's actually been almost 4 years since that game came out. So it might not be all amicable there after all, because Siren, which was basically he directed and wrote, came out in 2003, and then there was Siren 2 and Blood Curse was the third game. Those all came out 2003, 2006, 2008, and then Gravity Rush 2012, Gravity Rush Remastered. There was 5 years actually between Gravity Rush and Gravity Rush 2, so that's something as well, because Gravity Rush Remastered is whatever, but I don't know. So that's the second part of this equation. And then the third part of the equation is the one we have the least amount of information about, especially because, no offense to Quentin Cobb and John Bautista, but they're not huge talents like the others that we're talking about here comparably. But Push Square doing some LinkedIn diving and all of that, finding Quentin Cobb left the team, and then John Bautista announced that he was leaving the team. But I did find his tweet strange. Because he clarified like 2 weeks later, he tweeted this out. No one really knew. And it's weird. He said it was a crazy ride and an amazing company, but things just didn't work out this time. That being said, I'm proud of what we were able to achieve given the craziness we went through. And then he says he made the decision to move on himself. I believe him. And as far as he knows, the studio is still there and the project is still ongoing. It's pretty ominous stuff about that. I don't know if it's too early to read into it, but what crazy. So we have questions, right? Like, well, what did you achieve what craziness?
Yeah.
What is the project? I don't know. What do you think about? So what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder every time. See, this year is like the worst year for analyzing this stuff, because this could mean any number of things. Like the craziness that they're referring to could be restructuring due to the pandemic, or like maybe everybody's working from home, or maybe some weird shift due to all the crazy shit that's going on just in the normal world. Or it could mean, management problems, or like poor production planning, or a bad work environment. Like it could mean any number of things, given how unspecific the wording is. And I don't know, like, what is, because San Diego's working on potentially Uncharted, right?
Right. So they have the show there. And then they have some corporate headquarter there. It's where Scott Rhodey is, for instance.
Yeah.
And then it's been rumored that they've been hiring talent to create what has been thought to be an Uncharted game. And I remember Quentin Cobb and some of the other people that left Naughty Dog went there. That was part of the reason why people kind of had assumed that something was going on there, that they were prototyping something. So I don't know. I assume we'll still see whatever's coming out of there. It's just anything that comes from San Diego, even though this is a new and different team, it's just there's always something kind of up if it's not the show. This is where a lot of games were produced that, Guns Up and Drawn to Death and others that just didn't see the success that they may have been able to in a different era, different light. But yeah, that's what's going on there. And Japan Studio is huge. It's a big team, lots of different games going on there, but it seems like they've lost like an internal organ, I'll say, in Toyama leaving, but there are other people there. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'd be more curious about what they were doing all of this time and if we'll see it. And then the Ben stuff I think is most conspicuous, but I feel like maybe Jeff Ross's timing and John Garvin's timing, that's just a coincidence. But
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, Jeff Ross, I think, said something about maybe moving to Chicago or doing something like that. I think maybe I'm confusing him. So he might have a family issue. Who knows? It's all speculative, but there's no denying that, at least not ignoring San Diego, with Japan Studio and with Bend, long time people that have been there for 20 plus years have all just left. And it's hard not to connect the dots, but I don't know that there are any dots to necessarily connect.
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't think so.
All right. Let's move on here. Number 2. Sony has been surprisingly stubborn about sharing sales figures for PlayStation 5. In fact, it has never released major hardware successfully and not talked numbers, something it's likely doing in light of not being able to fulfill the pent-up demand. Yet, if numbers out of European countries and elsewhere are to be believed, PS5 may just be Sony's biggest console launch yet, eclipsing even PS2's and PS4's meteoric success. Sources tell website Video Game Chronicle that PS5 was the UK's biggest console launch in history. Specific numbers weren't shared, but we can glean them. PS4 sold 250,000 units in 48 hours in 2013, according to the website, and we now know that Xbox Series X and S have sold 155,000 units in their first day in the UK. Meanwhile, Push Square relays word out of Spain, where PS5 has had the biggest console launch in the country's history, outselling Xbox Series X and S 3-1. And Japanese numbers continue to trickle in too, showing relative success there as well. So not much to I'm still waiting for them to say something about how many consoles they've sold. Do you think that the reason they're not is because the response will be like, well, I didn't get one, and how many scalpers bought them? And
yeah,
I feel like they feel like they're walking into a trap or something.
Yeah, I feel like they don't feel comfortable bragging given the situation, and it's probably reasonable given, like, what is it? There was like I think 3,500 of them went to scalpers in like one go. I think I remember I saw something like that on Twitter where there was like this report of like, oh yeah, this one dude got like 3,500 consoles, and it's like, ah, well, that's not ideal, but yeah, I just don't think that they're comfortable bragging about anything in the current system that's in place. And also just the fact that even if they did mention how many consoles they sold, it's like they're still not producing as many as they probably likely would have wanted. So I just don't know what point there would be in really kind of hammering home like how many we've sold if so many of them are just not even really in people's hands yet.
Yeah, well, maybe they don't really have. I mean, they don't have to say anything, period, I guess. But
because sold also, because I should say also, because sold also means like, I'm pretty sure that has pre-orders into account, right? Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
It's gotta be.
The only question would be is if it's. We used to have this conversation in press, which was sold through or sold in.
Yeah.
Those different terms and all of that. Sold in is like sold to manufacturers, and then sold through means the consumer actually has it and all of that. So I agree with you. I think that there's no real reason to toot your own horn. They can do it later. And what I was saying before was that I think March 31st, when their fiscal year is up, that will be like the time in which they would have to probably say how many consoles they've sold. I imagine they'll say it before that, but they probably are confident enough that they're beating Xbox too, where they're like, well, you know, we don't really have to say anything right now anyway. I think they were trying to kind of embarrass Xbox last time, and I think they did. I think this time it's probably a little closer, and so we'll keep an eye on things too. But I'm thankful for these countries like Japan, the UK, and others that actually release granular numbers as opposed to here where we have to get it all through the MPD and then you have to actually pay for the numbers. It's a huge to do and quite expensive, actually.
Yeah.
I really like cooking. I'm actually pretty good at it. It's just that I kind of hate everything leading up to preparing and eating my meal. Rummaging through recipe websites and keeping shopping lists and trying to sync ingredients up so as to not be wasteful, it could basically be a part-time job. That's why I dig HelloFresh so much, America's #1 meal kit that ships you fresh, seasonal, pre-measured ingredients, along with recipes, straight to your door. Here's how it works. Go to hellofresh.com/sacred80 and begin picking out your recipes. That's what I've liked most about my HelloFresh experience, the ease of choosing what I want to eat from a list of tantalizing, ever-rotating options on their website. Meals are tasty and nutritious, sure, but HelloFresh also prides itself on sustainable sourcing, often nabbing ingredients for you from your own community. And their various plans offer a lot of flexibility and options too, because as we all know, not every week is the same. So my friends, I think it's time for you to try HelloFresh for yourself. Go to hellofresh.com/sacred80. That's HELLOFRESH.com/SACRED80 and use the code SACRED80 at checkout to get $80 off your first order, including free shipping. Again, head to hellofresh.com/sacred80 and use the checkout code SACRED80 to begin your meal kit journey today. Save time and eat well with HelloFresh.
All right. Number 3, Square Enix has revealed that Saga Frontier, the controversial PS1 JRPG that first came out in Japan in 1997 and the US in 1998, is being remastered. Saga Frontier Remastered is due to come to PlayStation 4 in the summer of 2021. Saga Frontier was unique because it had a series of playable characters and you'd go through each character's individual story, but its critical reception was lukewarm, especially on the back of much stronger JRPGs coming out of both Squaresoft and its competitors at the time. What we didn't really understand in the East, however, was that Saga Frontier was actually the 7th Saga game, and that we had actually gotten some of them years earlier in the form of the Game Boy Final Fantasy Legend trilogy. For its part, Saga Frontier would later get its own direct sequel, aptly named Saga Frontier 2, Saga, which was a late-ish PS1 release, not coming to the West until early 2000. I was surprised by this because I fucking hate Saga Frontier. I hate this game. And I remember everyone hating it. It was, I think there's a little bit of revision for the game now. I think obviously some people liked it, but I was shocked. It's like Saga Frontier? Really? Out of all of the games that you guys could like re-release and then I looked at it and it's got that shitty, because it's also coming to iOS and Android. If people go look at like Final Fantasy V or Final Fantasy VI on Android and iOS, they've replaced a lot of the graphics with this really just trashy looking subpar art, and it seems like Saga Frontier looks the same. So yeah, I don't know, man. If you're into this one, good for you. It's a big announcement. It was just kind of came from nowhere. I remember being so disappointed when I bought this game. Like I was so bummed out.
I've never heard of this in my life.
Yeah, I mean, if you weren't a JRPG fan, you probably wouldn't have known. I believe that it was advertised in Final Fantasy Tactics, like in the manual. I think that's how a lot of people found it, and so we all went and bought it. The logo is really weird too, so I remember being like, is it Sala Frontier or Sula? But it's Saga, and I remember it was $50. I bought it when I was in 8th grade in the spring of 1998, and you know, I had very limited resources at the time, and I remember being like so bummed out. I was like, this game sucks. I remember the only other game that I felt that way about that in those early PS1 days or early-ish PS1 days was another JRPG called Beyond the Beyond, which was horrible.
Wow, that's a shame.
Just horrible.
You should have been playing world-renowned classics like Duke Nukem, Land of the Babes.
I should have. That was a totally foreign thing to me at that time. I was such a weeb. I really was. I just really was. It is what it is.
There's this, I don't know if you could hear this. There's this godforsaken wretch outside my window right now in a cherry picker. A very loud cherry picker for some reason that is just right outside my window.
It's not coming. I'm not hearing it.
You're not hearing it?
Interestingly
That's
enough.
astounding.
No.
Yeah, it's not coming through the mic either, but it's like, it's just really awkward to just have this dude just like staring at me on the second floor of this apartment. It's very bizarre.
You should stare back at him.
I don't think he can see me. I think the sun is glaring in the window.
Oh, I see.
But I can see him.
All right. This one's interesting. Number 4. Aardman is a renowned British animation studio, perhaps best known for its quirky Wallace and Gromit claymation series, though it's also responsible for Chicken Run, which came out in 2000, Fleshed Away, which came out in 2006, and others. They've even published a few games over the years and developed one of their own, and it's that one lone game that's at the heart of this news. Aardman is collaborating with Japanese publisher Bandai Namco on a totally new franchise. Now, Aardman's lone game, which it actually co-developed, is a little-known 2018 release called 1111 Memories Retold, a narrative-driven title which Bandai Namco published on PS4 and elsewhere. Apparently, the two sides liked each other so much that they decided to do something grander. The press release reads in part, quote, "The collaboration's first major project exists across multiple media, and the team will be approaching partners in early 2021 with the development materials. Aardman's talent in creating characters and worlds will be used in collaboration with Bandai Namco's expertise in publishing and development to create stories tailored for current and future platforms," end quote. Bandai Namco has been eagerly pursuing Western partners for several years now, most notable among them perhaps another British studio in the form of Supermassive, who signed an 8-game deal with the publisher. That, of course, is the, what is it called?
Dark Pictures?
Dark Pictures anthology, yeah. The Rocky Horror Show. All right, so this is interesting. Do you know anything? I know you're a bit of an animation guy. Do you know anything about Aardman and Wallace and Gromit?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I watched a lot of Wallace and Gromit as a kid, and I remember they also did... They did a bunch of like fascinating claymation animations back in like the early 2000s that were really, really cool. I remember Wallace and Gromit specifically, and Chicken Run was a fun little VHS tape that I played quite a bit. They're really cool. I like that studio. I'm really glad to see that they're still doing stuff. Like that was one of the things that I got a big smile on my face when I saw them on this on the news today.
Yeah, I'm looking at their filmography and they have done what appears out of my eye here, maybe 20 shorts between 1979 and just one that came out called The Epic Adventures of Morph, that are like series or shorts or whatever, and short films and music videos and commercials. And so they're a big deal. This is not a world that I am well ingratiated in. My brother obviously would know everything there is to know about this, I'm sure, and is interested in this. But yeah, I like the Wallace and Gromit. I like that claymation style. Wallace has that kind of that weird mouth and that weird kind, that weird kind of look to him. And I don't know. I'm excited about this because I feel like what will come out of it is maybe hopefully like a new mascot platformer or something for us. It seems like they're going to do other things as well. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. I think they're like a particularly talented animation studio because they have a very specific style that I think kind of, and it's not like a specific style that's disgusting. Like there's Illumination is like another studio that has a very specific style, but their style is like really, really horrendous. They're the people who did like Secret Life of Pets and like oh my god, I think they did the like oh my god, what did they do? They did the Minions movies and Despicable Me and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm looking now. It says, Despicable Me, Hop, the Lorax.
Yeah, everything,
Minions.
Everything they do looks the same, but like not interesting. So it's nice to see that Aardman is still doing shit and that their style is still in demand enough that they can do something like this. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I didn't know much about them until reading about them for the show. I didn't know that they even did that game already with them. And shout out to Bandai Namco for continuing to seek out partners. That they seem to be pretty aggressive in doing it, and whether it works out or not, I have no idea. But it seems like they're trying to be a little bit more deliberate. They're bringing out some big games. I think they're doing Elden Ring right? With From Software. So they're doing that stuff. And then they're also doing kind of like they've slowed down incredible amounts on Tales releases. They used to get a Tales game out, sometimes 2 a year even. We haven't had a Tales game in like 4 years or something. So it seems like they're being more deliberate. And I've always had a soft spot for Bandai Namco, honestly, because I like their games. And I also feel like the people that work there were always really, really nice to me when I was in media. They were always really sweet people. So that's memorable to me as well. And like I've said on this show, their Japanese headquarters is awesome. You guys should go look it up. All right. Number 5, a couple of weeks ago, we discussed Square Enix's recent financial reports, which illustrated a staggering loss for the publisher on the back of its release of Crystal Dynamics' Avengers game. Now we finally have a transcript of the meeting that took place surrounding the release of the corporate finances, or their corporate finances, via website Kotaku, and it confirms what we already knew. The Avengers cost the publisher dearly. Square Enix confirmed that Avengers development costs have not been recouped and that the loss is somewhere in the region of $67 million. This naturally brought the entire AAA vertical of Square Enix releases into the red for the year, but here's the upsetting part for the publisher. Avengers was such a commercial bomb that it cratered their entire collective offerings for the year. Without Avengers, Square Enix president Yosuke Matsuda confirmed Square Enix would have posted a profit. Remember that in 2020, Square Enix finally published the smash hit PS4 timed exclusive Final Fantasy VII Remake, as well as the well-received Trials of Mana, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, and others. So we have confirmation of what we had already heard.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad for them. I mean, that's the decision they made. They bet big and they lost, but it sucks that Final Fantasy VII Remake is so huge. It's, I think, the 4th best-selling game in the United States this year. And Avengers cratered them so badly and sold so poorly that they are losing out on what would otherwise be a profitable year. They're eating $67 million, which, by the way, is like the full budget of a standard AAA game without marketing. So it's an enormous amount of money that they lost.
That's wild. I mean, I saw the writing on the wall with this pretty immediately, but it's still, that really sucks. Imagine just having like the thunder stolen from you by yourself. Like,
yeah, they made bad decisions, and they should have really just gotten Avengers out sooner. Well, like you've said, at the concept stage, they really should have just done things differently. But this game was just incubating for way too long. I think that they lost their thunder with it, and I don't think Crystal Dynamics is well suited to this space. Not to mention, it's not a space you just casually get into. You have to be really good at what you do in this space. We're going to talk about a company in a little while. Well, actually, we're not going to talk about a company. We're going to talk about Square Enix, who knows how to do it in this space in another way, and with another game. And it just half-assed approaches without long roadmaps and capital infusion. These games just can't work. And they did do the capital infusion thing, and they also advertised it. It's worth noting that the $67 million, part of that loss is in advertising because they just didn't recoup the entire cost. So it just sucks for them. I like Square Enix. I appreciate that they tried to take a risk here and get more into Western development, let Crystal Dynamics do something different, but now it's time to get them back to doing what they do, which is make third-person action-adventure games.
Yeah. It's so weird, though, because they made, as far as all the reviews that I've seen of the single-player portion of Avengers, like, people say it's pretty good. And it's almost like, yeah, it would have been really cool if you just made that. Instead.
That would have been nice. That would have been nice. But they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, well.
All right. Here we go. Number 6. Storied Japanese gaming company SNK purportedly has a new partial owner, if recent reports are to be believed, Electronic Gaming Development Company. This generic-sounding corporation is notable because it's a subsidiary of the MISC Foundation, created and chaired by none other than Mohammed bin Salman, a controversial member of Saudi Arabia's ruling dynasty for which the foundation is named for.
What?
So MISC apparently is like, I guess, like what his nickname is.
No, this is insane, though. Like,
okay. Yeah, so as relayed by website gamesindustry.biz, MISC now owns 33.3% of SNK, which it acquired for $223 million. Interestingly, MISC is already slated to purchase 17.7% more of the company, which will give it a majority. SNK will remain on the South Korean market where it's trading well. However, Mohammed bin Salman is like some of the controversial figures and companies in China that are getting involved in gaming, a shadowy, likely murderous figure who, as NPR points out via Kotaku, readily admits to being responsible for the slaughter of Jamal Khashoggi a couple of years ago, the Washington Post reporter. Beyond that, he's Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, essentially the next in line to rule the country, which is a totalitarian dictatorship in the form of a theocratic monarchy. SNK, founded in the late 70s, is perhaps best known for its cult favorite Neo Geo home consoles and arcade cabinets, and is the holder of many a retro Japanese IP, including the King of Fighters, Metal Slug, Samurai Showdown, Fatal Fury, and World Heroes. Some of these franchises, particularly Samurai Showdown, which my brother loves, are still released today, though SNK's glory days are far behind it. So the company is valued, it seems, at like $660 million. It seems like a little high for SNK, but nonetheless, this is happening. And so I want to say two things. First of all, people can get involved in buying the companies that they want, the free market and all of that. I also know that we have Saudi Arabian listeners of this show. And I try to not get involved in criticisms, let's say, of societies that are not my own, unless it's like something overt or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we in the West really do have different value structures than Saudi Arabia as a country. They mistreat women, gay people, transgender people. It's a pretty brutal place. It's a theocracy.
Yeah.
You can be beheaded and they do behead regularly. A lot of people there. And not that I'm against the death penalty. I'm just saying it's a different kind of place, and I don't think that you necessarily want. It's concerning that now we have communist Chinese kind of interests getting involved that I think are much more dangerous in a lot of ways because they're much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have this guy who is a murderer. You know, the whole, people should read, if they don't know about Jamal Khashoggi, how he was killed, and like it's really a fucked up story. And I don't know, I'm just not crazy about them getting involved in this way. It's just it's something to keep an eye on. What do you think?
No, yeah, I mean, of course not. This is such an obvious like situation where it's like, yeah, you've got this psychopath from a different country who's openly admitted to killing people, and he's like, yeah, just let me own Metal Slug also. It doesn't even sound real. The way the story is said, but I mean, that's how this works, really. You know, like you just go where the money is, and money isn't always moral, but money's money.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, I mean, that's just kind of the horror story of just how things work, sadly. But I mean, hey, man, whoever sold the company, I mean, I'm sure they got some good money, but then it's also like, oh man, how did that? Not that any money is like clean. I don't really think there's such a thing as like dirty money, really, because it's just, you know, it gets passed on to everybody. Who cares? But at the same time, it's like if you sold your company to like a dude who straight up murdered somebody in like a different country, it's like that's a bit direct. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I just think, I don't know. It's like Saudi Arabia, not to get political, but they just kind of get away with a lot because of their connections to oil interests. And
oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's like the main reason they get away with a lot.
This is a country where it is illegal to be gay. It's illegal.
Yeah,
you know, it's illegal to be transgender. It was illegal until a couple of years ago for a woman to even drive a car. They basically, you know, I know some women like wearing the hijab and stuff, but they basically just cover their women up. You know, drug use is totally illegal. You can be killed for it, you know, executed for using drugs. It's a pretty serious place, and they're allowed to run their society the way they want. It's not like I want to fight them or something like that. I just want to say we don't hold the same things dear, or at least in the same order here that we do there. And I feel the same way about China. Now, everyone can get involved in peace and commerce, and that's great. But if you interact with SNK moving forward, understand that your money is going towards a foundation, which, by the way, seems to do some pretty good stuff. If you read about MISC Foundation, it's basically given, a lot of that money is given to like Saudi Arabian kids and like kind of for the benefit of science and all that. It's cool. And Electronic Gaming Development Company is kind of a subsidiary that I guess will be kind of funded by this operation. But I don't know. It's just something I wanted to put out there in case people were curious. And I felt like it was only the right thing to do because we did the same thing for all the Chinese stuff that was being injected into the industry as well.
Yeah.
All right. Number 7. I promised you I would talk about Square Enix again. Square Enix has revealed that its popular MMORPG, Final Fantasy XIV, is getting its very own announcement showcase, which will occur on February 5th, 2021. This is notable because it's expected that it's here that the team behind the ongoing game will reveal the next big expansion for the product. Final Fantasy XIV, which first launched on PlayStation 3 as well as PC in 2013, was initially poorly received, but was revived with the so-called Realm Reborn iteration. 3 major expansions have since come to the game: 2015's Heavensward, 2017's Stormblood, and 2019's Shadowbringers. So based on that schedule, it's safe to assume 2021 will have its own expansion. And we'll be hearing about that in February. The game currently totes more than 20 million registered players, though it's unclear how many of those players are active. This is a game I've been thinking about a lot because I kind of want to play it for some reason. I don't know why.
Do you think it's because it's like a Final Fantasy game and you just kind of like feel like you're missing out on?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way about Final Fantasy XI, though. I think the reason was because it just didn't stick around. I mean, people still play it, but it didn't stick around in the consciousness for as long as this did. It's also a feel-good story, it coming back and all of that. But, Rush has the squeaky toy. That's great. That's wonderful. So, Final Fantasy XIV announcement coming February. It looks. By the way, I always thought it was Heaven's Sword, the first expansion, but it's Heavensward.
Oh, huh. Well, that's weird. That's not. Well, this is all fake words anyway.
Yeah, but, I mean, I guess I understand though. It is like it's Heavensward. We're going Heavensward.
Yeah, that's it's not a pleasant sounding word though. Heavensward doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well as I think conceptually it should. But whatever. You know, it's so interesting that like they just have such a good handle on live service games in this franchise that is in a franchise that is so far removed from live service. You know, especially like Final Fantasy is a single player JRPG, but they managed to make it into a live service MMORPG, and like everybody loves it, and people like it's being like consistently supported. But like they couldn't do Avengers. Like that's so weird.
Yeah, you think that they would take what they learned. Or at least they would be able to take some of what they learned and kind of use it for that purpose, but they just weren't able to do it, I guess. So 2 different games, but nonetheless, Final Fantasy XIV trucking along. Maybe I'll have something to say about it at some point. I got to take this toy away from Rush. I'll be back.
The dog was never seen again. If you have seen Rush, please call the toll-free number on your screen today, and you'll get a free little Rush plush. Can't promise you when you'll get it though. I'm not in charge of manufacturing. I just do the marketing. Excellent timing.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's good. I was just telling them how Rush was never seen again.
Oh. He's dead now. All right. Number 8. If you're a PlayStation Now subscriber, Sony has revealed a new slew of games you can look forward to on the service for the month of December. The biggest addition by far is that of Guerrilla's 2017 smash hit Horizon Zero Dawn, though there are some other notable games on the roster too, including the 2018 action RPG Darksiders 3 and the 2019 action RPG The Surge 2. Other additions include the 2020 survival game Stranded Deep, the 2016 side-scroller Broforce, which I've always wanted to play, and the 2019 vehicular combat game Wreckfest. So you can look forward to that. Number 9. In case you're tired of hearing about Cyberpunk 2077, too bad. There are a couple of new pieces of news worth absorbing. For starters, CD Projekt has confirmed that save data can be transferred between PS4 and PS5 versions of the game, not only via the obvious PlayStation Plus cloud save route, but via LAN cable, Wi-Fi, or external storage. So that will solve any of your potential cross-gen woes. However, not all news is good. What else did he find? Hold on a second.
Oh, he got another one?
He's got another one now.
Holy shit. Pulled it out of his pocket.
Oh my god, you went downstairs and got it?
That dog definitely has thumbs that he hides from Colin. He just tucks them in.
All right. Sorry.
It's all good.
This flamingo that Micah bought him, and it's a great toy, but you just can't use it right now, buddy. However, not all news is good. We're going to have to wait a little while longer to hear the devs' plans for post-release DLC for the game. According to website Video Game Chronicle, CD Projekt talked during an investor call about DLC plans, noting that the initial plan was to announce before launch, but with all of the problems getting the game out the door, they decided to wait. Cyberpunk 2077 comes to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on December 10th, possibly even by the time you hear this. Nathan Densley wrote into us on Patreon and says, "Hey, CNC, What's the plan for the coverage of Cyberpunk 2077? I'm not sure about the game and want to wait to hear what you guys think about it. Chris, what is your plan? I mean, you're much more eager about this than I am. I'm not going to play it until next year, I assume. Maybe that will change if it's like unbelievable or something, but
yeah.
What's your plan with Cyberpunk?
I think I'm going to jump into it on day one. I think I just want to see what the hell this thing is. I'm playing Witcher 3 kind of a little bit in the meantime, just to kind of get associated with just CG Projekt design philosophy, because like I feel like I'll have a chance of understanding how to play it if I play the previous thing that they made, even though it's very clearly not going to be even close to the same kind of thing. But I'm planning on jumping in pretty immediately and trying to get through it. There is still a lot for me to play, though. I'm still trying to grind in Destiny 2, and that patch doesn't come out until the 8th, so I'll have like 2 days that I have to just like get everything done in Destiny before I'm just whisked away into this Night City nonsense. But I'm excited. I'm curious to see like what the hell this thing is. I'm curious to see like how extensive it is and how detailed it is, because from what I've seen, it looks not to say that it like looks like it's going to be like a game-changing like next level experience, but it does look pretty impressive in a lot of ways, and I'm excited to see how that looks on next generation consoles. I'm excited to see like how it handles like load times on these machines. I'm excited to see like the various performance modes that it's capable of running, if it is. I'm very curious to see, although that won't be me seeing directly. I'm very curious to see what the base PS4 and Xbox One versions look like.
Me too.
That is probably, honestly, aside from just being excited to play it, that is probably the. I think that might be the biggest thing that I'm curious about.
Well, that answers your question, Nathan. We'll have something to say about it.
Yeah.
Real soon. Number 10, website Gematsu reports platformer Psychotics Colossus Down comes to PlayStation 4 in January of 2021. Card battling RPG Deck of Ashes is coming to PS4 in the second quarter of 2022. New Swery developed game The Good Life and horror adventure game Borneo, A Jungle Nightmare, previously called Cannibal, are both coming to PS4 in the summer of 2021. And Shooter Synthetic Ultimate is coming to PS4 at some point in 2021. Gematsu also reports that fantasy RPG Outward, launched on PS4 in early 2019, has surpassed 1 million copies sold and will be getting a new DLC expansion right before Christmas, and that Nirvana, the sequel to bartending simulator Valhalla, has been delayed indefinitely. Website Push Square confirms that Colonial RPG Greedfall, launched on PS4 in 2019, is getting a native PS5 launch at some point in 2021. PlayStation and Epic have announced that a Kratos skin is coming to Fortnite. Kratos, of course, being the protagonist and star of Sony's long-running God of War franchise. French studio Motion Twin revealed that its popular procedurally generated Metroidvania Dead Cells, which came to PS4 back in 2018, has surpassed 3.5 million copies sold. And finally, Swedish studio Arrowhead, which created the cult classic PS3, PS4, and Vita shooter Helldivers, has revealed it's working on an all-new AAA game, though further details are unknown. And since I wrote this up, something else has happened too, nothing big, but Gematsu also reports that the JRPG Neptunia Reverse is coming to PlayStation 5 in the West, and that's it. So that's all for the news. Now, it's time for our intriguing games of the week. Chris, I kick it over to you. You want to talk about Immortals Phoenix Rising, surprisingly.
Yeah, so this is a game that we've kind of been making fun of for a while. Not because it looks bad. It actually looked pretty decent from like the first outing, but they famously changed their name to Immortals Phoenix Rising from Gods and Monsters, because apparently Gods and Monsters was what was it, the Monster Energy?
I think Monster Energy drink is contested the trademark.
Which is insane. But anyway, that was, we were kind of laughing at it a little bit, but it's this open world Ubisoft action adventure game, which, on paper sounds terrible, because that's just every Assassin's Creed and every, Watch Dogs and basically everything that they've been making for the last several years. So what really stands out about it? But like, I was watching a little bit of gameplay of it, and I gotta say, like, it looks kind of cool. It's this Greek god kind of pantheon thing where you just kind of go around and you interact with different gods, and it's got like a comedy bent to it. It looks like it's not taking itself super seriously. It looks like looks like it's got really cool boss encounters. I think the visuals of it look really stellar. It looks like it runs really well. So I got to put this here just because it's very rare that an open world, Ubisoft game looks promising to me. It's like very, very rare. I think the last time was like Assassin's Creed 3, and we know how that turned out.
Right, and and that was also a long time ago. So
yeah, it was a while ago, and obviously I like Far Cry 3 and I like the Far Cry games, but I feel like I like the Far Cry games more because they're FPSs as opposed to them being like open world Ubisoft games. But this looks like the first time in a while that they've put out something that looks like it could potentially be of decent quality, and that just looks different from other Ubisoft games, despite it kind of being on paper somewhat similar. So. I would say, I don't know, check it out at the very least. At the very least, look up some gameplay of it, because we live in that generation now where you could just do that and decide for yourself.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this segment, is to kind of just direct your attention to something. And
yeah,
there was one video I saw that was not complimentary of Immortals, which was, I guess, a video of, I don't know if you saw this, like side-by-side footage of the game running next to Zelda, and how it's basically copying like a lot of things that I guess Breath of the Wild did. So
yeah, I could definitely see that. I definitely see a little bit of that, but at the same time, it's like, look, man, if you want to copy something cool, I'm fine with it as long as you make it good. Like if you want to make an exact fucking copy of Shadow of the Colossus, but with like better controls and like different bosses, like please do that. Like someone fucking do that. Like actually, for me, if only just for me.
Well, we'll keep an eye on this one. It does look interesting. It kind of did slip by the goalie a little bit with me. It does come out this week, so people can write in and tell us what they think. The game that I wanted to call people's attention to is a game from John Romero. We haven't heard from in a little while. Romero Games, of course, but John Romero best known for his work at Apogee and later id and Taikatana. Not so much. But this game that they just released is called Empire of Sin, and it's pretty cool looking. Now, I must admit, and I wanted to say off the top, that the game's not getting great reviews. I think it's going to be up to you whether or not it's for you. Paradox published it, so they're well-respected, well-liked PC publisher especially. But basically what it is it's a strategy game about Prohibition Chicago in the 1920s, and you're building like your criminal enterprise there. And it looks fucking cool, and it sounds super cool, and it's turn-based and all this kind of stuff. Basically, there's like an active component where time is passing, but then when you get into battles or do certain things, then it becomes like this turn-based kind of game. And I think it looks dope. I really want to check this out once I've continued to clear my plate of some other things that I want to do. And Brenda Romero worked along with him on it, and she's another great game developer, obviously. And John Romero has a really interesting history and has made so many games, but people that don't know much about it, you should read, first of all, Masters of Doom, which is a must read about id Software, but read about Apogee and all of that, and then his later work at THQ, and they did stuff for like Zynga and Facebook and all of this. They did a really well-respected early Facebook game as well. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, anyway, just check out Romero, what they're doing, and Empire of Sin. There's a lot of video footage out there and all of this, and it's on a lot of other stuff too. So if you don't want to play it on PS4, you can play it on PC, Switch, or Xbox One as well. It
looks cool. I like the aesthetic of this time period in video games in general.
I do too.
So it is cool seeing like something that looks kind of like almost XCOM-y in that environment. It's a really cool take.
I agree. So whether or not it's actually very good, I don't know, but I think it looks great, and so check it out if you'd like. All right, Chris, tradition dictates that we end our show with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience as submitted on Patreon. We'll begin with Niall Harrison, who wrote in and said, COVID effect on the gaming industry. This is a big subject. You could probably do a whole episode on it. What do you guys think will be the lasting effects on the gaming industry due to COVID? Bigger gaps between new releases, smaller teams working on multiple smaller projects due to working from home, etc. What do you think, Chris? What do you think are some of the things that will permanently stay around once COVID leaves us? Because it's worth noting, actually, in the UK, they just gave the go-ahead to, I think, the Pfizer shot. So they're going to start inoculating people. I think, imminently there. So I don't want to say we're about to say goodbye to COVID, but we're beginning to say goodbye to COVID, I think, in the coming months. So we'll get back to some sort of normalcy. But what will remain from this era in game development and the way we absorb them and all of that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of developers continue to embrace the work from home model. I think it's going to be more and more unnecessary to own office space and office buildings and have to worry about like upkeep and like, you know, keeping things in working condition and like worrying about like, I wonder when we're going to get rid, like how are we going to sell this building in like however many years. It's like it's so much easier to just send the equipment home with the people who make your game and just have them work at home. Whether or not that's like the healthiest thing to do, that's kind of up in the air. I'm not really sure. I think that depends on the person and the you know, per house and per household and per apartment. But I do think you're going to see a lot more studios kind of embrace that style of development going forward, given how clearly unnecessary it has been to just stay in office spaces.
Yeah, I think a lot of business has learned that. It's a lesson that I learned years ago, so I feel like I was ahead of the curve there a little bit, but that you don't need to have a centralized group of people. Like Colin's Last Stand has collaborators and employees all over the place, and that works great for us. And I think it benefits the shows as well. We're all more relaxed. We don't have to worry about travel and being at work and doing things like that. And I think that it matters. And so when you kind of transfer that idea to games, I think that it'll make better games. I think to Mr. Harrison's question here, I think there will be bigger gaps between new releases because I think games are going to become harder to make with this remote structure. I think that's one of the trade-offs, but I think people will be healthier. They'll be happier. I think the games will be better. And so I think that that's something that will stick around as well. And I think that a lot of people that you're just not involved in it. You don't think about it or whatever. I don't think a lot of people realize how much money companies spend on space.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
If you work in like, say you have like a portion of a floor of like a New York City building, you know, that could be like $250,000 a month. Yeah, like it's not a joke, you know, and to just be able to say like, we don't need to spend this money. We can just shrewdly just save it or pay our people more or invest in other things. I think get bonuses, whatever the case might be. I think it's all good. And I'm able to pay my people pretty well, I think, partially because we don't have that expense. So, yeah, I think that that's going to stick around as well. I think that's very well said. Cortland Dobson wrote in and said, what's going on, CC, and hopefully D? No D for you today, Cortland. Maybe I'll give you a D next week, though. My question is in regard to remakes and or remasters. I wanted your take on implementing the PS5's adaptive triggers and haptics on such titles. For example, I think it would be amazing if such features were included in, say, Death Stranding while climbing mountains and crossing rivers. Thanks, and much love as always. I gotta say, man, like, I'm becoming increasingly more impressed with this controller. And
yeah.
Even playing Bugsnax when I was like standing in like a river, like you can really feel it. I don't know how it works. I don't understand it. But it does work and it does feel right. Like you don't even think about it sometimes. It's so subtle. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is such a new way to have to interact with and feel a game. And the adaptive trigger is kind of a similar thing. I think Death Stranding is a really great choice, Cortland, for what can be added with the triggers and how the game can be enhanced. What are you thinking here, Chris, about some games that you might think would be enhanced if it was, let's say, a remaster?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback is really cool and it's really impressive tech. But the more that I toy around with it, the more that I find myself kind of being distracted by it. Specifically the triggers. Like I think the haptics are really cool, and I like the subtleties and the vibrations. It's really cool tech. I really appreciate it, and I think it does enhance a lot of things. Even just in the beginning of Miles Morales, when you can feel kind of like the feeling of like the train going through the tracks. That's like a very familiar feeling if you've ever been on a New York City subway. And it was cool to kind of feel that pretty elegantly translated through a controller and through rumble motors. But the triggers are simultaneously the coolest thing to me, but also the most distracting, because they were really cool in Astro Boy, and I thought that they were like really interesting in Spider-Man in the way that they were kind of like subtly used. But I was playing Call of Duty with them, and I was just like, man, I gotta shut this off. Like I have to turn this off. This is so like I'm playing a video game and I understand that it's trying to like immerse me, but at the same time it's like, yo, I don't want to literally have to pull the effort of like pulling a trigger on a gun takes a bit of effort, like a real one, and I don't want to have to exert that amount of effort just to spray a guy, you know? So I don't know. It's hard to. I don't know where my feelings are exactly on the new kind of vibrations and the new haptics, but they're a little mixed. I still think they're positive. I still think they're cool. I think Death Stranding is probably like the best example of something that could be retroactively made better. I think Ghost of Tsushima could stand a little bit of it too, like especially with all the grass and the wind. I think that could be really cool, but those are really the only two things that are fresh enough in my mind for me to really elaborate on how well they could be used.
Yeah, I think there's potential here. It's an interesting way to kind of interact with a game and to get that feedback, like you said. And I always felt like Rumble was really kind of this throwaway thing. I actually started to really like dislike it almost in some sense, where I was just like, I remember when it came to N64, you get the Rumble pack, and it was just this whole thing. It seemed gimmicky, but they stuck with it long enough where it does make some sort of coherent sense, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where we're at now. And I got to say, I'm impressed with it. I don't think it's necessary, but I think that it's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I don't know if do you feel this way too? Like whenever there's like no rumble in something, it feels like kind of awkward and wrong now because it's been so prevalent. That's the first sign that I know that my controller is running out of battery is when the rumble shuts off and it's like, oh God, I just shot a gun and I felt nothing.
Yeah, we've definitely been programmed to have weight, heft, and like that feedback, force feedback in our hands. It's definitely interesting. So, all right, let's move on here to Brandon O, who says, hello, Congressional Colin and Constitutional Chris. I was wondering what your guys' feelings were on politicians getting into the Twitch streaming space. Colin, I know you've long discussed the future possibilities of politics entering the gaming space, so I'm really interested to hear Chris's insight into this. The traditional games media has covered AOC playing Among Us and other games on Twitch to great delight, and I appreciate that she is using the donations to help her constituents. However, I can't help but feel like this excitement would not be reciprocated if someone like Chuck Schumer was streaming Warzone with Dr. Disrespect or Nancy Pelosi was streaming the latest Destiny 2 event. It brings to mind other topics such as Animal Crossing banning political endorsements on their islands. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this topic and keep making some days of the week better than others. Thank you, Brandon. So what do you think of this? This has been a big thing the last few weeks, AOC playing Among Us and kind of getting involved there. We said it on the show, and Brandon does acknowledge that Twitch is like the new frontier for people to get involved on, and as far as reaching people, and the candidates that use it to great effect are going to see great benefits from it, I think.
Yeah, no, I think we first noticed it. I think Bernie was he didn't play video games on it, but like I think he was the first candidate that I can recall. Maybe there are some smaller ones that didn't really make as big of a splash before him, but Bernie was the first one that I remember using it to any real great effect. As far as like, I think he would stream speeches or something. I don't recall what exactly he used it for, but it was kind of cool that he was doing it there. And I think as far as like the enthusiasm goes, like the reason AOC, well, I think it's the specific combination of things. I think AOC is just like a younger person, so it's like it comes across as less disingenuous when she's playing a video game on Twitch than it would if, you know, a dinosaur like Nancy Pelosi was streaming Destiny 2. It is incomprehensible to me that Nancy Pelosi would even know how to fire a gun in an FPS. But like Among Us is such a casual kind of very simple kind of, you know, really easily accessible game that it makes sense that somebody like AOC would be able to play it and play it well and seem genuine doing it. But yeah, I mean, obviously the enthusiasm would be very different. Like you're not gonna, of course, you know.
I would love Nancy Pelosi playing Destiny 2. Imagine if Nancy Pelosi was like awesome at Destiny 2 too. She was like really, really solid.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi is the darkness. I don't know, man. I think Twitch is a really cool platform to kind of do grassroots support on. I think there could have been a point where YouTube could have been that platform, but I think the door is long since shut on that. It's far too difficult to get into. It's far too difficult to break. It's hard to make a new channel and get like 10 views on something, you know, and it was hard to do that back in like the day. But like now with like Twitter kind of allowing you to kind of bolster like whatever you want to, however as many people as possible. That in combination with Twitch and just like kind of the live nature and the kind of live interactive nature of what that platform is. I think it's a brilliant place to get people involved in grassroots stuff and politics in general.
I think so too. Adam Stump wrote in and said, Guten Tag, amigos. What are your thoughts on the new Super Nintendo World theme park opening up in Japan next year? The SNES was my most cherished console when I was a kid, and I would be the first in line if something like that opened up here in the States. Also, do you think this opens up the possibility of a PlayStation theme park in the future? Interested to know your thoughts. As always, keep cranking out awesome content and have a wonderful holiday. Thank you. I'll keep cranking it. No doubt about it.
This shit is so cool. Have you seen this?
I have. Yeah. So what do you think?
I don't even care that much about Nintendo, but I would go to this thing in a heartbeat if it was in the States.
Yes.
It looks so cool and so like wholesome.
It's clean, man. I mean, that's the kind of the word I was thinking. It looks completely fake.
Yeah. No, it looks like a CG render almost.
Yeah, I was like, wow, it's incredible looking. I don't know that I want to go there, but
yeah,
because I feel like it's also the place of nightmares. In a way.
There's also the very amusing reality of the fact that like, you know, amusement parks get like really filthy. So like you're going to have this like pristine Nintendo World, but it's also going to be like grimy by the end of the that you're going to have to have like these, I don't know, cleanup crews dressed as plumbers going around cleaning the whole park. But no, I think it's cool, man. I think the States could use something like that. A video game theme park would be really awesome. I think the possibility of a PlayStation park is very, very low. That's just not going to happen. I don't see a huge market for you know, lose your daughter to state-sanctioned police violence, Last of Us themed you know, haunted house or something. Like I don't know if that's really all that like likely to happen.
Yeah, someone comes out and beats you in the leg and shoots an arrow in your leg. And
yeah. Come on the Last of Us ride. We'll kill your daughter and, you know, sustain you with a healthy dose of depression for 20 years.
Yeah, and MREs. All right. Yeah, so PlayStation theme park, I don't think so. I don't think that's really I don't think PlayStation's that kind of brand. I think Nintendo is a Disney-like brand. And so it's cool. I'm not into theme parks. I feel like this is also the wrong time for this because people are going to be all grossed out by each other forever now.
Oh yeah, I'm it's completely divorced from the reality of like what's going on right now. I think it's a good idea though.
All right, let's see here. Cody Horn wrote into us, Chris. Said, gentlemen, the DualSense truly is a great piece of tech. Well, we just talked about that. He said, I have the PS5 and have been able to play around with the Series S controller a bit, and DualSense truly is the more quality controller. However, I can't get past the joystick convex. I've always enjoyed the concave nature of the Xbox joysticks. The convex center of the PS5 joystick ends up meaning my fingers grip less and tend to have to be readjusted continually. Thoughts? So, just in case people don't know, concave and convex are, I think they're mathematical terms technically.
Yeah.
But convex means that it's basically like a hill. Concave is like it's like a concave, you know, it's like a little
like a crater.
Crater, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I have a specific thought on this. I was actually looking at the controllers before to kind of figure it out. I did realize that my fingers, and we've talked about this, I think, on the show, my fingers do slip in such a way that I subconsciously use my left finger all the time to push my right finger back, like my left thumb to like, you know, move my other thumb up, or I just let go of the controller and grab the controller again because my fingers are slipping. And I'm wondering if that is a result of this, because we're used to using convex sticks generally. If you guys look at the DualSense controller, or I'm sorry, the DualShock controllers, those were all totally convex sticks. There was no concave nature to them at all.
Wait, what?
Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're right.
It wasn't until we got the PS4 controller that we had like a concave, like it was like a convex outer thing with like a concave middle thing.
Yeah.
And we kind of have a similar thing now on DualSense, I think. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but what do you think about what Cody's saying here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like going between both of them. And I do agree that I think concave sticks just feel a little bit better. You don't really have to readjust your thumb as much. But I don't know if that's necessarily like the biggest deal. I guess everybody has like a different biggest deal when it comes to like their own preference in controllers. Like for me, it's always been the offset sticks. Like I always I've always just preferred the offset stick layout of the Xbox controllers as opposed to the parallel sticks. But, you know, I still think the PS5 controller is probably... I think the PS5 controller is probably my favorite PlayStation controller, I think. I've spent enough time with it now to really feel that way. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the joysticks being concave or convex matter that much to me. I don't really think about even though I prefer concave, I don't think about the fact that PS5 is convex.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. Well, I don't know if there's really any wondering even involved. They certainly studied what people prefer, and it seems like it's like this moundy kind of stick with a concave center where the convex is kind of holding your thumb in the middle. But I understand it kind of all depends on how you hold it too. It's always fascinating to watch how people really hold their controllers, because a lot of people actually hold their controllers differently, like slightly differently.
Yeah.
And use their thumbs especially differently on the sticks and the way they feather the sticks and stuff. So I don't know. I'm sorry that you're struggling there, Cody, but stay strong.
Yeah. These are the best controllers that we've had, I think, though.
Oh, certainly. I agree with you. 100%. Will Ellis wrote in and said, "What's up, nasty boys?" This is the final question. He says, "Quick question and comment about video game adaptations. I know you guys have talked it to death and there's probably no changing your minds, but with HBO officially bringing The Last of Us to the small screen, it's got me as excited as I've ever been about seeing a video represented in live action. You guys have said in the past that video games are okay to exist on their own and do not need to have film or TV adaptations to validate them. For me, it's not so much that I want a way to bring in those on the outside in to see why I love video games so much. For example, my father would never play a video game in his life, but if they could ever make a BioShock film that's even halfway decent and I could share a modicum of the love I have for that universe with him, it would be amazing. Don't get me wrong, I know most are bad, but and he says he would defend Mortal Kombat and Silent Hill. Even if they fail over and over again, isn't it worth it to try? The Uncharted games will always be there for us as they are, but imagine if Tom Holland's movie is good and it can open up doors for so many others to enjoy the property. Anyways, hope you guys have a swell week." What Will said here actually resonates with me because it's the argument my mom made to me not too long ago. We were talking about the HBO show, The Last of Us show, and how I was disappointed in that. I don't know how it came up. But then she had made the point that she was always interested in that universe and that she will never be able to access that universe as a 70-year-old woman that doesn't play video games. And so the HBO series will be her way to enjoy it. And I was like, that's a completely valid and interesting point. So I agree with that. How are you feeling about this? I mean, it seems like this HBO project might be the first time in a while, if not ever, really, we've had kind of expectations maybe of something high quality.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I do agree. Like, I do love the idea. And I've definitely thought about this before where it's like, yeah, you know, man, I wish I could get some of the people that I really care about who don't play Halo to be like interested in this. And I wish I did have something that was like a proper like movie or like a show that like I think he worded it well to just kind of share a modicum of the love that you have with something with people who wouldn't be able to do it. I think BioShock has crossed my mind too as just like an amazing thing that I wish more people could experience. That game's so brilliant. So I sympathize, and I think I agree on some level. That's probably like the only little nugget of approval that I could have for any of these things. But at the same time, I just don't think The Last of Us is that thing, because I feel like of all of the properties that are difficult to absorb, I feel like The Last of Us is probably the least difficult. And I'm not saying that like a 70-year-old woman can play through The Last of Us, but I do think a 70-year-old woman could watch someone play The Last of Us and get a pretty decent amount of enjoyment out of it, as opposed to like BioShock, which is so much more of a video game, if you understand what I mean by that, where it's like, you know, it's a first-person shooter, there's like puzzles, and you know, there's not really a lot of dialogue happening at any given moment unless you pick up like audio logs and stuff. I just feel like the approachability of these things from an observer's perspective is a little bit skewed. I think the stuff that needs adaptations the most are the things that you couldn't really glean a lot of value if you were just watching them.
It also calls to question what is it about us that we want to share these things with others, right? Mm-hmm. Is it that we think they're gonna like it? Probably, but it says something about us too that we're so eager to let people in, that it's almost still like a club. There's a high level of, there's a barrier and a level of access, like you said, that is insurmountable. And so maybe these two lines are actually starting to converge in such a way, like you said, where it's not that unbelievable at all. And I don't know, is it possible that The Last of Us on HBO could work in the reverse as well? That it could convince someone like, well, I'm really missing out on video games. Because I've had that conversation with multiple people, older people in my family, as I've said on the show, where my Uncle Mike, for instance, he's retired. And I was like, you really should try video games. And it's just like something he won't even consider. Like, he doesn't even think about it. I think he thinks it's kind of like a joke, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe this would be a way to expose him to something that comes from this world and give him a better idea of why it's something that he might want to consider. I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe. I think it definitely has potential. And I don't begrudge anybody for going about it in this way. I think this is like a perfectly legitimate like feeling to have regarding, any kind of adaptation. I think it's cool that people want to share those things, and I agree with it. I just think The Last of Us is already so cinematic and already such a watchable game that like I just think it's a little bit redundant. I feel like a movie property based on like, I don't know, Final Fantasy or like any number of other things would make a little bit more sense as opposed to this that's essentially just going to be cutscenes, with like a little bit more of a cinematic angle. Like I don't know. I'm still very skeptical of it, but it would be nice if it was good though. Like I'm never rooting for anything to fail really, but I just I'm pretty good at calling these things as I see them.
I feel like my only problem with the HBO series, with The Last of Us in particular, is just is it a good use of Neil Druckmann's time? And my answer for Sony and Naughty Dog is that I'm sure it actually is a great use of his time for them, because he's a great writer and has the proving ground of PlayStation Productions kind of behind him. But as far as a gamer is concerned and wanting something else out of the studio, we're going to get something else out of them. I think. I just don't think he's going to be very involved in it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, maybe that's good or bad, depending on the way you look at it, but it's a little disappointing to me. I just don't know that Neil Druckmann needs to go back and rewrite this thing he already wrote. That's a little bit disappointing.
Last thing, just because I want to say this, I'm just curious as to how well this will age, but I kind of feel it. I think the Uncharted movie with Tom Holland has a better chance of being good than the Last of Us series, honestly.
Interesting.
I don't think Tom Holland would sign on to something that would, because you had Michael Fassbender kind of sign on to, Assassin's Creed, but like by that point, Michael Fassbender wasn't really in a lot, but Tom Holland's like on top of the world as Spider-Man. Like he wouldn't do he wouldn't do a video game movie unless it was something that potentially had a pretty good prospects.
All right, Chris, that's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols. Thank you for joining me as always. Appreciate you.
Of course, man.
And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of our show. We'll talk to you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, be well. Goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Colin's Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia, and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Colin's Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Nick DeMarco, Constantine Valencia, Andrew Morgan, Gregory Slavinsky, Stephen Nieder, Ross Marenka, Zach Parsley, Miguel A. Brewer, Morgan Ashley, Ben, Azan, Michael Vecchio, Brianne, Joey Finelli, Jerome Ferreira, SL the FMA, Ryan T. Mandel, Jorge Palomino, Enrique Perez, Don Lee, Daniel Diamore, Brad Cooley, Jeremy Key, Patrick Leslie, Homeworld Hub, William Holbert, 3dprintshop.com, Chris Buston, Betty Ann Moriarty, Colin Jewell, Nelson LeBlanc, Daniel Johnson, Zach Bonham, an Unofficial Controller Podcast, Jay Getter, Vexius, Jeff Mercado, Galja, Love Fortuna, Boots, Megadet, Saul Balcazar, Raul Melendez, Bloody Fang, Eric Harden, Matt Martin, Rodney Coleman, Chris Moore, TB Lightning, Andy Kinnanen, Taylor Barkley, Chris Galvin, Ryan Murdoch, Mason Cadillac, Ollie Fritz, Chris Buston, Zach Allum, George Anthony Nunez, Kyle Hagel, Colin Love, Daryl E. Naiman, Ryan R. Kittredge, Toby Ryland, Michael S., Damon Weathers, Carl Tolman, Richter86, Barrett Boswell, Christopher DeVio, Kevin Kamaki, Blake Israel, Sean Mason, Josh Gravelick, Brian Chan, Organic Produce, Ali C83, Isaac Wastman, Mubarak, Carlos Algarit, McDog18, Richard Hebert III, Miranda Grubba, Ray Leja, David Castanez, Donnie Nolan, Josh Yeager, Matthew Cooper, Toothless Gibbon, Martin Beck, Gavin, Joey Andrzejczyk, Nathan R., Joe McPartland, Christopher Moore, Lawrence F. Prokop, Colin Davenport, Eric Finkenbeiner, Lou and Ray Loper, Dylan Burns, John Schultz, David Chestnut, Yusuf, Anton K., Alan Tremblay, Tyler Bello, Tony Zuniga, Sean Battershall, Robbie Hensley, Alex Cabrera, Lennon Brixey, Corey Wyatt, James Kinslow III, Hugo's Desk, Peter Reynolds, William O. Carroll, JSC 0828, Jesper Jansen, Phil Crone, Throw7, Adam Nix, Josh McKinney, Michael Gates, Alex Gates, Sean Chandler, Petro Rose, Gio Corsi, Greg Latta, Gerald Pennington, Justin Wagaman, Paul Joyce, Chad Lewis, Todd Paxton, Joshua Smallwood, Shane Rayum, Spencer Brand, John Cordero, Greg Juliffs, Mark Boggio, Keith A. Lewis, Marius Scarson Peterson, Tyler Harris, Matthew Purdue, Toby Shootman,